seems to be working, and that seems to be working. This is working, so very realistic, don't you agree? So welcome, good morning. It's a lovely day, it's good to see you.
We're glad you're here.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
I've been coming down here now for several years, and most of you I've been working with for the better part of that time. So you guys must be getting pretty well steeped in what I talk about. So why don't we leave today's discussion up to you? Is there any area of what I present that is not clear to you, or that seems to be a conundrum in your life? Because what I say or think, of course, is my business and doesn't do you any good. What's really useful is the degree to which you can incorporate any of this in your own experience, and you get some mileage out of it, have it be useful for you. And so the question is, to what degree have you been able to do that? To what degree haven't you been able to do that? And what sort of obstacles do you seem to be coming up against? I know I haven't been working with you all quite as long as some of the other people here, but still, it's been a while. So anyway, having said that, I turn the floor over to you. What sort of things seem to be conundrums for you in terms of being with this experience of yours as it is, freshly and openly and astoundingly? Yeah.
You speak up into this because the internet people may not hear it.
So speak up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I need some new approaches to experiencing itself.
Right.
Experience itself.
Uh-huh.
From how you have spoken, it is all there is.
Mm-hmm.
It's the doorway.
Yes.
But I don't seem to be walking through. I seem to be looking at it.
Right. Okay. The operative word there is seems. Being in experience means that the doorway, you are walking through the doorway. The passage of time is the never-ending unfolding of this actuality. And the very nature of this actuality intrinsically is what we might call transcendental, or just practical terms, let's just say it's more than you think it is. And in the surprising unexpectedness of every fresh moment, of every fresh experience, and the unpredictability of it, it's that freshness and that indescribability of what it is revealed, maybe subtly. And so the trick, if any, is to attend to that to some degree. So you notice, wow, what is this experience that's here? It's not what I expect. It's not what I predicted. There's no way I could have known that exactly what I would have been seeing at this moment. There's no way I could have known exactly what I would be thinking at this moment. There's no way I could have known exactly what I would be hearing at this moment. Just precisely what it is. And so it's like a dream that's all of a sudden taken a left turn. And every moment in our waking experience is like that. It's entirely unpredictable. And in that freshness is a vitality, is an intelligence, is a meaningfulness. But it's it's not a rational meaningfulness. It's not anything you can interpret or get a handle on. It's just a wow. So I call it a wow factor. You know, in fact, I was having a rather prolonged conversation with some friends yesterday on a similar topic, which is quite relevant to what you're talking about, I think. Which was in terms of the conscious mind versus the unconscious mind. And I mean these, I'm not educated in psychology, so I mean this in sort of the pop psychology sense of, you know, the conscious mind is sort of what you think and what you have access to, and the unconscious mind is somehow more nebulous or whatever, right? But basically, the conscious mind functions on interpretation. The conscious mind functions on, oh, I am this, I am that, my name is such and such, I am and such, I am doing such and such. So it always has a narration, it always has a story, it always has an interpretation that it can come up with. The unconscious, on the contrary, is very non-linear, very multidimensional, the unconscious is present in the moment. It's present in the actual naked presence of experience, all the qualities that are present. It feels them, it tastes them, it experiences them, it enjoys them, but it has no interpretation, it has no narration, it has no analysis. And typically, as humans in modern culture, we're very strongly biased towards the conscious mode of functioning. You know, what's important is what we can talk about, what we can read about, what we can say, what we can analyze. And if we can't analyze it, then or talk about it as some failure, and we somehow don't get it. And that's not strictly true. In fact, it's quite the opposite is true. In terms of this, in terms of being with this more profoundly as it is, the trick is really coming to acknowledge, honor, appreciate, settle more deeply into an unconscious mode of experience. And unconscious is not an accurate term. Unconscious doesn't literally mean unconscious. It's only in terms of this particular terminology that they put it that way. And on the contrary, the unconscious is very conscious, but it's very nonlinear. It's very irrational. It's very it's instantaneously assimilative. The unconscious is with every experience instantly as it occurs. And just in that experiencing of all the qualities, and it can't name what the qualities are, but it drinks them. It experiences them very fully and lusciously and multidimensionally. And it can't talk about it, it can't make sense of it, it can't sort it out. But that's actually a good thing, because what's here cannot be sorted out in actuality. It cannot be made sense of. You can't make sense of reality. You know, this is our silliness and our arrogance as human beings, is the pretension that we can get a handle on things, you know. And this is the mode of the conscious mind. The conscious mind is, well, you know, we made a lot of progress here, and we're figuring out what's going on, and we're gradually getting, you know, to the bottom of things. It can't happen, because that whole mode of sort of linear logic, of either or logic, cannot actually assimilate what this actually is, because reality is not either or. Reality is not, you know, linear. Reality is multidimensional. And so the unconscious mode, or the inherent modes of what, you know, I mean, again, unconscious is just a way of labeling it. Mode of being with experience is really of profound value in this work in terms of spirituality, because then you can, by learning how, or letting yourself settle into a more nonlinear, more irrational, more immediate way of being with your experience, you can begin to appreciate it as it is, which is very nonlinear, very multidimensional. I mean, and again, all these categorizations are kind of conscious mind characterizations. So even though they're evocative, they don't really pin anything down. So, so to get back to what you brought up, we have a lifetime of being programmed in and indoctrinated in approaching things in terms of sort of conscious logic and rational logic and being able to think about things, being able to talk about things, being able to study things. But experience, that whole mode of approaching one's experience is very limited intrinsically, and it just can't go very far. But we already have this whole other mode that is fully operational, it's fully functional. We are all fully engaged with our experience on this, so-called unconscious level, and we typically don't even acknowledge it because we're so sort of brainwashed, or we're so biased towards the conscious modes of functioning, rational modes of functioning, logical modes of functioning, analytical modes. And those modes cannot engage with reality as it is. They cannot engage with reality accurately. They distort it completely past the point of recognition.
And that's because there's nobody doing the experiencing on
Right.
the unconscious.
Yeah.
And we hold on to being somebody.
Yeah, the unconscious makes no sense. It's not analytical. You can't say what's happening. You can't say who it's happening to. You can't say how it's happening. And all of those kinds of considerations are just completely irrelevant from the unconscious point. The unconscious is just, it's this full field assimilation, multidimensional, whatever. I mean, you can't even say what it is. But the great advantage, our great opportunity is we are all already fully doing that mode. We just typically have been, indoctrinated and basically brainwashed. We're biased against it. We don't acknowledge it. We don't, if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. It's nothing. We just sort of write it off. Whereas in the contrary, what doesn't make sense is what's real. What doesn't make sense is what's valuable. And what makes sense is just spin doctoring and bullshit. Go get a job in Washington or something if you want to pretend to make sense.
How do you, on an everyday level, how do you juggle these two things? I mean by that, we have this unconscious, this spontaneously arising, call it irrational, it's simply taking in what is. At the same time, to function in the world, there does need to be a certain amount of, at times, planning, rationality.
Right.
Or we need to do A, B, C, D.
Yeah. Well,
how do you?
Well, there's a trick. There's a trick, which is that it's not a trick. It's an inherent aspect, which is that from the conscious mind's point of view, the conscious and the unconscious are oil and water. They just don't mix. They're completely opposites. From the unconscious point of view, that's not the case. The unconscious point of view is quite comfortable with the conscious mind, and the unconscious sees the conscious modes of functioning as a small subsystem of it, which it is. But the conscious mind, you can't even recognize that the unconscious even exists, and if it does, it just thinks of it as a problem or weird or just that crazy thing over there, and how dare someone tell me to pay attention to it because it doesn't make any sense. So the problem, it's only a problem from the conscious mind's point of view. So again, ultimately, in terms of in terms of this particular sort of model of approaching spirituality, in terms of the identification with conscious modes versus identification with unconscious modes, the whole essence of the spiritual path, the essence of the spiritual unfoldment, essentially consists of shifting your identification of what you are, what this is, from the conscious mind approach to the unconscious approach. In other words, you shift the center of gravity of who you think you are and of how you function. From the point of view of this sort of paradigm, that's it in a nutshell. That's the whole shooting match. And again, the conscious mind says, well, the conscious mind can put up all sorts of arguments like, well, how do you tie your shoelaces if you're in the unconscious mind? You're all Jello or something. But it's not actually like that. And from the unconscious point of view, you know that. It gets that. It doesn't have a problem. being logical, doesn't have a problem remembering things. Because in actual fact, the unconscious's point of view is true. The so-called conscious mind is a small subsystem within the so-called unconscious functioning. And it's an aspect of it. And in fact, the conscious mind is being done by the unconscious. Because conscious functioning is not being consciously done. You don't sit and decide to have a conscious mind. You don't sit and decide to be logical. How can you do that? Well, it's mysterious, i.e. intrinsic. It's an outgrowth. It's the same way, well, how do you know how to digest your food? How do you know how to walk? How do you know how to do anything you know how to do? Well, it's a spontaneous functionality that you have that manifests because of your nature of what you are. Like, how does an oak tree know to bring out acorns? It doesn't have to think about it. It just, I don't know. And likewise, how do you know how to have a conscious mind? Well, here it is. But the conscious mind comes from the unconscious. And so the whole conundrum in spirituality is a misunderstanding of primacy, the misunderstanding of what's basic. Again, all of which is traceable to our bias towards the assumption that the conscious mind is the be-all and end-all and is dominant and is true and is good and is useful. And in actual fact, it's like a very small subsystem that somehow is claiming to be the whole thing, erroneously. And so it's really just a matter of restoring the true perspective, you might say, which essentially consists, in practical terms, it consists of shifting your sense of identification from conscious functioning and conscious frameworks of definition, let's call it worldviews, to the unconscious modes, which are much more assimilative, much more actual, much more multidimensional, much more inclusive. Yeah.
Like taking deeper, like it's the marks of existence, the Buddhist marks of existence has a bearing on this. I think there are Nietzsche, Nana, and Dukkha. But in terms of, I contemplate, okay, that there is suffering or unsatisfactoriness about my experience, the way I frame, the way I hold the world.
Right.
And, people, okay, you hear the word clinging, but clinging, what does that mean? You have a gross definition of it, but that definition properly, I submit, can be expanded to all this naming and, defining of things are, okay, so, after doing that for a lifetime and seeing how it doesn't work, one may say, okay, I'm going to suspend belief, as opposed to the literary phrase, suspend disbelief, but suspend belief.
Right.
And this is in any and every activity of function, or one moment, and then that's, quote, the end of suffering. Well, what's the end of suffering? See, that's an understatement, isn't it? Because we all need and want the end of suffering, and that's fine, and there's nothing wrong with that, but the actual end of suffering is much more miraculous, you would say, I think, than just simply the end of suffering. As to the enlightenment that comes from the cessation of this, quote, clinging.
Yeah.
And another maybe metaphor that I came up with recently, I was just thinking, call it Delhi Dharma. So there's the guy, the achieved, quote unquote, achieved person is eating food in the deli, and the, quote, aspirant is looking through the window at him and thinking, now how can I get there? And the strategy, see, well, there's glass, I gotta walk around, go in the door, I gotta pay, I gotta do this, that, and the other thing. Whereas the reality, and that's just that, that conscious mind working. Whereas the reality is to come to say, oh my God, I don't have to do anything. I've got whatever he's got. If I can just let go of my frameworks about existence, then I will be eating food right here, right now, without having to go in and try to figure out what he's doing so I can get enlightened too.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, that's.
Yes, that's very good. That's very good. And of course, the clinging is, as you say, clinging to identifying. clinging to identification, clinging to defining. It's not clinging to particulars so much as clinging to a mode of relating to one's experience in terms of relating it to it in terms of defining it, saying what it is. When you stop saying what it is, it stops being a problem, because essentially problems accidentally get defined into existence along with conditions being defined into existence. And conditions per se don't exist unless you define them. It's not to say that nothing exists, obviously, in any simple sense, but what exists is so multidimensional, multi-layered, evanescent, instantly changing, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you can just list the qualities of it that make it intrinsically undefinable, that it is literally completely undefinable. And when you're with it in those terms, it never presents as a problem. Because you can't pin down a problem, you can't pin down a solution. It's just all endless flows of weirdness and experiential, call them qualities showing up with this amazing, incredible dynamism and multidimensionality and unpinned down ability. You can't actually pin down what anything is. And yet if you try to do that, if you try to pin down things, if you try and define things, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because you create the fantasy of limited entities and limited characteristics and limited conditions and limited problems and limited solutions and limited resources, and basically you're screwed and all of a sudden suffering. So yeah, exactly so. And all of this is not in the abstract. All of this is in simply, whether or not you want to play this gamesmanship of pretending you can define your real-time experience, this right here, right now, or acknowledging that you can't. And in that letting go of defining is a great relief, a great embracing of wholeness. And it's not a wholeness that you need to affect an embracing of. It's a wholeness that you already are embracing. You already are it. So it's really just a settling, a letting go, a settling in fullness of transcendentality. And what it transcends is everything. It transcends definability. It transcends limitation. It transcends stability. It transcends partiality. It just. But again, categorizing all these things is going into a definitional mode, so it's already untrue just by doing it. Yeah.
This brings up, putting this in another context, it's sort of switching from doing to being. But it's also, you put a lot of emphasis on willingness and stuff, which I'm understanding now. It's not like, I've been looking over notes and emails and stuff over the past few years, and it's really subtle stuff. And directing attention, which I've sort of been doing, and directing attention to certain things which is really weird. And all of a sudden, it's starting to that starts to let go of things too. I'm finding that not as an obstacle, but oftentimes I'll take these discussions as we're talking about stuff as opposed to really jumping into to experience. And I'm finding that there's, this isn't like I'm finding that it's actually extremely, how do I say this? It's starting to maybe hit me more emotionally or something, that it's profound. And not that it's like that all the time, but it's actually extremely moving.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know.
Yeah. Experiencing is not a spectator sport. Even if we're sitting and talking about it, we're doing it. So it's not at a remove. It's not like, oh, we're talking about something over there. You know, even in the talking about it is it itself. The talking about it is swimming in it. The talking about it is dancing with it. So it's all just endless engagement. And being and doing is fun. But again, being and doing aren't opposites, because being doesn't exclude doing. But doing, in the context of being, doing is meaningless and undefinable, because being is nothing but doing. Being is nothing but happening, let's say, and there's nothing beyond happening. So specific, something that you could qualify as a doing versus a not doing, they're both happening. Or they're both happening, and so being per se is the big melting pot in which everything is that, or this.
I mean, it's obvious that the way you experience it is that it's completely inclusive, even if you feel like you're not inclusive, it's there regardless.
Yeah, and that feeling of distance is it itself. It can look like that even.
Yeah. I got a newsletter the other day, and it said nothing gets to be wrong. And I just love that part of that. Nothing gets to be wrong. This is very inclusive.
I was listening to sounds the other day, and first the surface sounds, and then it went deeper sound behind the sound, and then behind that, I don't know what that was. It was just buzzing or something.
Good.
And then I got stuck at a point where it said, if you go further, you will disconnect from everyone.
Disconnect from what?
From everyone.
From everyone?
That's what it felt like. It
Right.
felt like you will no longer connect to another being, like to
Right.
another human being.
Right.
That's what it. And I knew that it was an idea, and I knew it was a thought. I knew that, and yet I couldn't go beyond it.
Good. Yeah. No, but that's true. That's very good. Go beyond. Disconnect. Fuck them.
I tried. It just wouldn't. You know what I mean? I knew that it was a lie. I knew it was a ploy or whatever you want to call it. But
Yeah. You
but
can
it
very
just wouldn't
you
go
can
further.
very easily go to a point of depth where the sense of others and even otherness becomes completely meaningless and irrelevant. And that's fine, because that's what this can look like. But it doesn't actually exclude others, because others are also what this can look like. But in terms of exploration, it can seem to be a hierarchy. See what I mean? In other words, it can seem like you have others, and then you get to a point where you lose them, and then you get, and so on. You get to a point where you lose everything. You get to a point where there's absolute nothingness, or I don't know, whatever. I mean, there's silliness talking about like this. But all of those modes of this are this. They're all true, but they're non-hierarchical, and they're not better or worse. This has major modes in which there's you alone. This has major modes in which there's nothing. This has major modes in which there's everyone and everything. And they're all equally true, and none of them is true as such. So yeah, in that kind of exploration, go everywhere. Go anywhere you can. If you get to a place like that, just let yourself relax. I mean, what's wrong with losing connection with everyone? It's not like it's going to be permanent.
I don't know. I mean, I was trying to be brave, trying.
No, that's okay.
It's like that, but
Yeah.
it just wouldn't.
But see,
It just stopped. Like,
Yeah.
And I was like, damn it.
no, oh,
And-
right. I would say you probably have a subtle identification that you're holding of the importance of others. And you were coming up against that identification.
Yeah, and I felt that, but I couldn't, or didn't seem to be able to. It was kind of like I touched it. It was almost like total silence.
Yeah.
beyond the buzzing, but total silence.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
And then it just started receding or something like that, like it wouldn't go deeper, further, even though I wanted to, but it was,
Yeah.
just wouldn't.
No, that's fine. This is very, very good noticing. It's excellent. Just play with it. Be gentle with it. But be playful, and just let yourself. You know, if you find yourself in this similar kind of an orientation again, let yourself flirt with it. Let yourself sort of relax with it. Play with it like it's a joke. Play with it like it's a game. It's something you can go into and come out of, and so you can remove the sort of the threatening aspect of it, or the aspect of it that seems to have an urgency to it. And once that becomes diminished, you'll find it's much easier to be fluid with it and to pass through it, so to speak, and back and forth without any impact, without any seeming tension or urgency.
And having said that, circumstantially, or my life, I find that I'm kind of like a time traveler or something, somebody who's lived life already,
Mm-hmm.
and came back in a younger body,
Uh-huh.
and doing we're going through the rigmaroles of life with this new realization or knowledge or whatever,
Mhm.
and it's I just I feel like I'm in no man's land.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not. I don't seem to be connecting with the people my age.
Right.
But at the same time, I am able to function with them, just like with everybody else. But it's kind of like I said, you come back through time and you're having these conversations. I know they're meaningless. Like I know we're just playing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but.
Well, it's not important that anything be any particular way. So if you're not connecting, that's okay. If you feel alienated because of a different perspective, that's okay. And even that's not rigid or exclusive, and doesn't preclude other modes simultaneously. So you can be with people and have it not feel very deep, but still you can be with them to the extent you can and enjoy it for what it is. I mean, I'm putting it in terms of enjoyment, but whatever kind of engagement. And that's good. And also the presumption that other people are engaging with each other, even though it looks like they are, is questionable, I would suggest.
Which is what I bumped into when I was listening to sound, and I just sort of
Yeah.
that's where, you were asking us, are you getting
No, that's great.
stuck?
Yeah.
That's where it seems to be, is that it sort of comes in full circle with that, what I bumped into.
But this is excellent. You're working with things at a very deep level. That's very good. The trick is continue, and the trick to continue is be light, be playful. Just experiment, explore. Don't think of it as any urgency or pressure. Just sort of like it's entertainment. Like, wow, I wonder what I would find if I poked and looked in there. And you will stumble onto sort of tricks of being able to do that and being able to get beyond what seems to be a catching point. But that's very good. Again, a really direct way of engaging, you've probably heard me say many times, go to the energy. By which I mean go to the actual energetic substance of your experience. Like if you're anywhere, it doesn't matter where, so to speak, within your experience you do this, you will find the same thing ultimately. So you can look at, like if you're playing with your field of vision, instead of looking at things, look at light. Just say, I'm not seeing things, I'm seeing light. I'm not seeing colors, I'm seeing light. And feel the light, go into the light, let the light be with it very subtly. And again, you will discover layers, you will discover that it is light. You'll discover that, oh wow, all this time I've been thinking I've been seeing things, but I've just been seeing light. And with sounds, you're hearing a voice, or you're hearing a TV, you're hearing a car, you're hearing wind rustling in the trees. Actually, all you're hearing is sound. And the sound is the same, whether it's a voice or whether it's a car. Sound is sound, it's energy. And go into that energy and be with it, and you will find you will be able to be with it very, very profoundly, because you are with it very profoundly. This is not doing something that you're not already doing. So that's why I like to call it noticing. You're really just noticing something that is already the case. You are already with the energy of your experience on a very primal level. And go to thought, instead of being with thought in terms of what you're thinking about, be with thought in terms of the presence of thought as an energy. Thought is a substance. Something is present when you're thinking, or you wouldn't know you're thinking. So what is it that's present? What is thought substantially? What substance is present that you call thought? It's just the same as what substance is present that you call sight. Well, it's light. But what is light? Light's a word, But light is not more than a word. Light is an actuality. It's an experiential. Light is present in your experience right now. You're engaged with it very, very, very intimately, and you can be with it very subtly, or sound, or thought, or sensation, and it's easy to classify our experience in terms of sort of the six sense fields, five senses in mind. But there's all sorts of other sensory experience, not sensory, there's all sorts of other experiential qualities that we don't have names for, just little subtle vibes and subtle moods and subtle flavors that are just they aren't anything. They aren't sensory, they aren't mental per se, but they're not nothing. They're just little subtle flavors. And you can notice these things, you can pay attention to these things, and right away you're with your experience outside of classification. Right away you're in the unconscious mind, because your conscious mind can't come up with words for this. There's no words for this. What is it? It's just little vibes. That doesn't really pin anything down right. We're calling it vibes. But the fact is, you already are there. You already are engaged with these energetic experiential phenomena very profoundly. And so you just can notice that fact, and you will very directly discover that your experience is much more and is completely beyond anything you may have ever thought or has been describable.
So, and sort of ditto Marina and what other people have brought up.
Uh-huh.
And so there I notice, and it's either vibrating or it's not vibrating, or it's still or it's not
Mm-hmm.
still. A lot more stillness than not stillness.
Mm-hmm.
And then I cling to fear, or at least it seems like what it is.
Yeah.
And then my body starts really, really hurting.
Right.
Okay, so then I start doing, I do breath sounds so that my body kind of
Right.
relaxes.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's another way of working with pain
Mm-hmm.
than trying either just observing it, or what I do is trying to soften it. I think there's something else, and I'm getting the inkling, but I don't grasp it.
Well, there's two ways to work with pain, just like there's two ways to work with anything. One of which is to be with the energy of what is actually present, and if you do that sensitively, it will very rapidly go beyond what you can designate as anything. In other words, pain is not really pain. Pain is completely beyond pain when you're with what's actually present. It's only pain on a very superficial level. And the same thing, it's the same thing we were talking about with sound. Sound is only sound on a very superficial level. You be with sound more subtly, and all of a sudden, again, you get to a point where it's very weird. All of a sudden, it's not even sound anymore, and you just go somewhere that's just, you go totally beyond the human framework. The same with pain, same with light, same with anything. Any experience, by being with what I called, being with the energy of what it consists of, or just being with it very nakedly in terms of what is present in your experience, it will transcend interpretability. And pain will literally stop being pain. You'll go beyond pain. It's not that the experience will necessarily cease, but it will open into like a rainbow of dimensionality. It will be so undefinable you won't be able to hold it as anything whatsoever. So I said there's two ways. That's one way. You basically be with the energy of what something actually consists of, what the experience is actually made of. In other words, you know you're experiencing something because something is present. What is it that is present that is causing you to call it, oh, I'm experiencing this? In the case of pain, pain is a label, it's an interpretation of something that is experientially present. What is that something? And you go to that something and you experientially just be with it, and then just if you be with it intelligently, if you be with it nakedly, it will tend to deepen, it will tend to morph, it will tend to open, it will spontaneously reveal sort of finer and more dimensional aspects of itself. And there's no limit to how far that can go until calling it pain or calling it light or calling it anything is just absurd and trivial because it's gone way beyond that. So I said there's two methods. That's one. The other method is go somewhere else. And not as a denial, and this is important, because if you go somewhere else in relation to the pain, like, oh, I'm going away from the pain, you're actually being in relation to the pain by going away from it. So you're actually subtly reinforcing the pain without going into it. So you don't go away from the pain, just go somewhere else. Just like there's a car driving by. And when you're in pain or not, there's still cars driving by. When you're in pain or not, there's still the sun shining. When you're in pain or not, there's still, sensation of gravity, whatever. And you can go to these phenomena and look at what's there. And eventually you'll just forget the pain. It's not that it will go away or not, that's irrelevant. Just like the sun doesn't go away when you're being with the pain. But you're not paying attention to the sun, you're paying attention to the pain. Don't pay attention to the sun. So those are the two basic options. And both of them can be fruitful, and you can just play with it and find whatever is useful. But treating pain, if you're oriented to pain in terms of solving the pain, you're kind of screwed because you're still orienting to the pain, which is subtly feeding the pain, feeding the importance of the pain, feeding the pain as a meaningful, urgent event in your experience, and so it's just a subtle mode of clinging to the pain. Either trying to fix it or trying to get away from it is actually clinging to it. Whereas, these other two modes are not. The other two modes lead to transcendence without fixing it, without denying it, without solving it, but still they inevitably lead to transcendence. And again, to do that, to make that a reality in your experience, you have to play with it and kind of discover the knack, discover the trick. But it is doable. And it's best, again, you've probably heard me say this many times, it's best to practice these things where there's a little less urgency. So rather than waiting to practice when you're in extreme pain, sometime when you're not, then play with the sound of the cars going by, or play with sunlight, or play with something like that. Because there's less pressure, there's less of a tendency to get sucked into, oh, I'm in pain, oh my God. So you're already locked in. So it's a worst case scenario, and you're setting yourself a very difficult challenge. Whereas if you build up some chops, if you build up some skill and some facility, when the pressure's off, when it's easier and just a game, you will actually be developing skills of sort of being able to let's say shift your attention subtly in terms of your experience, and those skills will pay off ultimately in situations where the pressure is more extreme.
That is a huge statement to me, thank you, because I do play and it's a lot of wow and this whatever.
Uh-huh.
And then the voice says, but that's because everything is lovely.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen when everything isn't lovely?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so there's this kind of bifurcation of,
Mm-hmm.
and anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a form of whatever, forget interpreting it. That's what you keep saying to us, and that's what's real, and that's been real since I've been coming to you for almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
It just keeps growing,
Mhm.
and to have
Yeah.
some trust
Mm.
that that's what's,
Mhm.
that's it.
Yeah. And also, relating to lovely versus not lovely is itself a really deep and powerful clinging. You know, what I would suggest is inject a new category in relating to experience. It's like weird. And then lovely is actually weird, unlovely is actually weird. And all of a sudden you've leveled that playing field. Instead of having, you know, the Niners versus the Hawks or whatever, all of a sudden it's all the same. And then there's less tendency to polarize, because polarization is the way that, you know, you slip into the conscious mind, you slip into these grasping modes and so on, interpretive modes, and it's subtle. So you know, experience is weird as hell. It's weird. I mean, it's undeniable what's going on here. I don't know, but it's weird. And so being with it in those terms sort of negates this kind of subtle slipping into that qualifying mentality of lovely versus not lovely, pain versus not pain, you know, suffering versus not suffering, all of which is just a tar baby. You're screwed as soon as you get in that mode.
Right.
You can't fix it. You can't fix that mode. You can't fix any qualities from within that mode. The only thing you can do is leave that mode, which is basically what we're talking about here. And when you leave it, that whole mode turns out to have been irrelevant. Turns out to have been just a way of creating problems for ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read the first page of my webpage recently, or at all, but there's a little blurb on there, and the first part of it says something like, "Leave the realm of the describable. It doesn't exist." We define our problems into existence as well as their hoped for solutions, and that's how we torture ourselves. In reality, there's no problems and no solutions. There's just weird. There's nothing but weird. Is weird a problem? I don't know. It's too weird to tell. Is weird a solution? I don't know. It's too weird to tell. And besides which, weird just leads to more weird, so the problems solve themselves anyway, and in the sense of just morphing into something else. So even if you have a problem, it's going to be something else before long anyway. So,
Thank you.
sure.
What I do is I feel the life force of the inner body.
Good.
At the same time, I hear. Now, I was talking to somebody here today, and I said I was going to ask you about this because it seems to me when I do that, there's something about it that is eternal.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay,
That's very good.
then you answered.
That's very deep noticing. That's being with your experience very primally.
And is the fact that I twitch, meaning that when you do that, your body twitches,
Uh-huh.
meaning that I'm doing, I guess I shouldn't say this, but doing it right?
Well, it's not important. That might happen. All kinds of things like that can happen, sure.
Okay.
And that can mean you're doing it right, but it's not particularly relevant one way or the other. There's no wrong way to do it, just do it.
Yes.
The point, the whole trick of doing it is to be with it as it is, rather than be constructing it. Don't construct a life force to be with. Just be with this that is, and then it's a letting go rather than a holding or going to, or you let go, and here's the life force.
And all identities die in those
Yes.
instances.
Absolutely. You're beyond space and time. You're beyond causality. You're beyond definability. You are eternal. And this is just a scratching the surface of what this actually is, of what you actually are. And you can and do feel this directly. And this is what you're talking about, is noticing that fact, and that's great. That's very deep noticing. Excellent.
There are wrong ways of twitching.
I'll keep that in mind.
I was thinking of a statement in the Ashtavakra Gita recently. I was relating to it, and I had some conditioning about it, that it was sort of blaspheming or something, But it was something like he doesn't want the world to end. He doesn't mind if it lasts. So kind of a detachment from.
Sure, it's irrelevant. It's just irrelevant. There's no problem here. There's no solution here. There's no here, and there doesn't need to not be a here. It's just like all of those qualifications are irrelevant. They're beside the point.
I was also resonating with your statement. I think on your 11:16 talk, you said something to the effect that you don't know what it is until you see it or you're there, and you don't know how to get there until you get there. But once that happens, then it's sort of easy to kind of reclaim it, And it just made, it just rang true to me, that I could say, well, why that would be, but yeah.
That's why I call this a yoga, because you're developing familiarity with being with your experience in fresher, basically more inclusive, more primal ways, and by doing so, you make that a part of yourself. You're acquiring skills, you're acquiring chops, so to speak. And once you have those skills, you don't lose them. It's like once you learn to walk, you don't forget how to walk. And so likewise, when you learn to be with your experience in these more naked, more primal ways, you have access to those modes. And ultimately, you learn that they aren't even particularly important. But you have to go there to learn that. I mean, the whole spiritual path is it's a very tricky paradox, because you basically have to go through the whole path. You have to attain realization to discover that you didn't need to. But you can't discover that until you do, by going through it.
Yeah.
So, but that's very true. It's very, very true. And that's why it's liberation, because true liberation consists of the discovery that you don't need to be liberated. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
It's just this. Just like it's always been. But to get that, you have to go through this. To get it, you have to. I mean, it's very paradoxical and strange.
I used to have a conundrum about the feeling of I, and then the statements, well, they really go to the field of all, your whole perception here, the whole time, and it seems that as we notice more, that this ceases to be a conundrum.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes care of itself. It's not a matter of seeing any sort of truth about it. I mean, it sort of takes care of itself.
Yeah, because the feeling of I and the presence or the fullness or the undefinability of the field are not mutually exclusive. They aren't in opposition. They are aspects of this. Is there a sense of some feeling tone of I here? Sure. Is there some sense of a transcendental actual field? Sure. But again, the two designations, but the designations are basically the same thing. I mean, go looking for I, and what do you find? You find this. Go looking for the field, what do you find? You find this. So, can this look like an I? Sure. Can it look like a field? Sure. And it looked like a conscious mind should. And it looked like an unconscious mind should. And it looked like just being a normal human being going around here living a pathetic life according to your half-assed karma. Sure. And it looked like transcending space and time and being absolutely nothing and absolute divinity and the soul existing. Sure. But it's just this. Those are just all ways of spinning this. Those are all seemings that this can seem to present as. But it's not about the seemings, it's about this. And the seemings come with. This spins off seemings, a bazillion every nanosecond. I mean, you could think of and that could be a sort of a rule of thumb definition of this is a seemings generator. A seemings generator. It endlessly generates seemings. It endlessly shoots off seemings. And you can't ever get to it itself, but you never leave it itself, so you don't need to get to it itself. And it seems to be this, and it seems to be that, and it seems to be the other. But in practice, the rule of thumb is very, very simple. Just feel your experience. That's all. Just feel your experience.
Well, every night I would go through this. It's like the buzzing thing. The whole sensation is so strong everywhere, including the. But you can't even say body, but I have to say it, just this localized. And the buzzing, this internal sound is getting louder and louder. It's so much. And I really can't say what it is. And also all the sound occurring.
Yeah.
Stimuli, well, it's saying outside, but there's no outside, there's no inside. So they're not missing. And the light and the ghost, it's just incredible. Just sometimes I just feel I don't know what to say. I can't say what it is, but it's just so busy and so kind of overwhelming. It's just getting more and more, and nothing blocking anything else. Everything appears, but there's no separate.
Yeah.
You can't say.
Very good. Just let go into the energy. Let go into. There's nothing but energy. Just let go into it, and just let it go where it goes. Let it be where it. Let it seem. Let it present any seeming that it presents, and that's great. Yeah? That's excellent noticing. That's very good. And there's nothing else. That's all that there is this energy. There's nothing else. And so if you see the energy, you're seeing everything. So you're seeing the totality.
You keep talking about the noticing, and the experience of noticing happens gradually. The understood what you are talking about is very, very gradual. For instance, like noticing the sound, and we normally think that I hear the sound, right?
Yeah.
But there's no air. There's no air.
Right. And that's what you're noticing. You're noticing what is present, what experience is. You're noticing what is actually present, and when you notice what is present, you notice that it transcends what we're used to interpreting. We're used to interpreting, saying, "Oh, my ear's hearing sound." But you notice the actual experience of the sound, and all of a sudden you get there's a sound present.
Yeah.
And then even the sound stops being sound. Even you can't say what it is, but just this amazing something, this amazing quality, this amazing energy. And the same with anything. I mean, any experience whatsoever, you notice what it is, and it opens to reveal itself as vastly beyond what you have been interpreting it as being.
Yeah, in Heart Sutra, Buddha said there's no I, no air, no, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's what he's talking about. That's it.
Yeah.
And this is an experiential fact. It's not philosophy.
One time I tasted something, and I know one of my coworkers, she loves eat, so I just shared with her, and I told her, you know, you can taste the fragrance of it. And she's completely puzzled. What are you talking about? But it is not, it's interrelated. I can't even say, I really don't know how to answer her question. She said, your tongue doesn't smell the fragrance.
You say, no tongue? No ear, no eye, no nose, no tongue? Why don't we have a 5-minute break? This will not be a lunch break. We'll have lunch before long, but let's just, just get up and stretch. Just like a quick 5 minutes, and we'll take a much longer break for lunch. I'm going to leave the online broadcasting.
Just have to wait, Sam.
And I'll be back in a few minutes.
Oh, there it is. The dirty Kleenex.
I'll get it, it's me.
The famous dirty Kleenex.
No, it's your retreat.
Where was that?
Yes, I remember that.
No difference between the sunset and the dirty bathroom.
No, it's like-
Peter.
Yeah.
I drop them wherever I go. I wish I dropped money like I dropped Kleenex.
No, I'm not Sam. Who is Sam? That's a very profound question. Who are you? He's not here today. If you...
I mentioned this last time, and I don't know, you haven't been looking at it or whatever.
Oh.
I've only read a couple, I don't find the time, but
Yeah.
I read Quickly Skin the Fool and the Magician.
It looks like
It's
more-
got
more than
glowing
I would want to-
recommendations.
Yeah, it looks like more than I would want to
Uh-huh.
wade into, but it looks pretty good actually.
I have a question. Speaking of books with a lot of words, in your search and studies, did you ever read The Course in Miracles?
No.
Okay.
I'm familiar with it, but I never read it. I mean, I glanced at it.
You glanced at it, right? Yes. Well, it's one of the methodologies right now, and I always do. And we're free to play with any methodology. For sure. Okay.
What do you do? Good. I just love this conversation. It's like about everything, you know. And then he said to every man, just quit it when I get too close. Or whatever, I don't know. When I get a story, just gasping or whatever the fuck it is. And then being able to stay with it. And the way you frame it, which may not even be what you're talking about, it doesn't really matter. But once in a while. But, you know, I just love the fact that everything, 100% of everything. And I've been getting that there are no problems. I mean, I get that, you know, like I'll look at the thing and I'll go, there are no problems, but then we repeat it, it's like, amplified relative. No, but you know how it is. And I thought, but just to say just now.
Yeah, why not?
I just,
No time like the present.
because it just grabs it, you know, it's, you know.
Let me think about that.
And I go, no. It's just weirdness. It's just part of the. Oh, yeah. It's just weird, you know, and that ability to both expand and be with.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are you coming? The right time?
Did you know 8 o'clock there's still good college? On the line there. She's not as desperate as me.
But you and your wife are on the same page.
Yeah, well, yeah, she's probably a little further ahead of the book, I'm not sure. At least in terms of calmness.
What?
At least in terms of calmness.
Maybe we could regroup before long. We'll have lunch shortly.
That's the way you do it, get calm.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth?
At the beginning of today's session, I threw the ball in your court and said, let's sort of see how you all are doing. And I'm very impressed. You all are, in general, doing extremely well. You know, you're getting this. You're getting the point of this. You're getting the sorry. You have to call me. You're really working with this in actuality, which is the whole point. It's easy to be with spirituality conceptually. It's easy to be with spirituality as an idea or as a game. But to really, when it gets real is when you dip into what it actually is, which is simply getting real about your experience. I mean, it's all just about this. It's right here. This is the presence of your experiential field. And check it out. That's the sum total of actual spirituality. Right there. Really nothing else to it. And so, just, to discover that you can do this, to discover that it's actually both easy and fun to do this, and it works, it pays off. You can get significant mileage out of it, so to speak. Right, Stan? But that's the real touchstone. That's the point of focus. Just this that is here. That's the orientation. This that is here is the whole point. It's where everything is to be found. Just look at this, and this will reveal everything.
Peter?
Yeah.
I practice, or I try to practice with this thing with dying. Right before, I go to sleep, just to feel, or just try to go there, or, whatever fears that are left, or whatever is still stuck, or, and what tends to happen is that every time I begin to touch it, it morphs. It doesn't, it's not like boom, it just morphs, and you can't catch it in the act.
Right. Sure.
So is that what basically that's what tends to happen? There's nothing there.
I mean, this happens with anything. This happens with any investigation or inquiry, and this will happen in point of fact at death. You'll be essentially, not necessarily consciously, you'll be, well, okay, here it is. I guess this is it. Where is it? What is it? And lo and behold, you won't be able to say. Where is it? Where am I supposed to look? What's supposed to be happening?
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I
find. But every experience is like that. If you look at the actual experiential detail, and with great precision, with great, presence of any experience whatsoever, you realize that you just can't get a handle on it. It's basically, the closer you look at it, the more you can find, and it doesn't tend to converge into any kind of a simplicity or any kind of a wholeness or any kind of an integration, It's just...
Can I say something? Do you know, it dawns on me, that might have been a revelation. I'll tell you what happened. But I had awakened, and I knew that death was its own thing, and it takes over. Death knows what it's going to do, and it's very powerful, and it will take care of what's going to happen.
Sure. Just like life.
Yeah.
This moment right here, it's doing it. It's doing everything that's being done.
Yeah.
It's all happening. It's all covered. It's all taken care of.
Yeah, and there's no point worrying about it.
Of course not.
Yeah.
You know, and besides which, anything you think about it is just your fantasy or projection about it.
Yeah.
The reality itself will be what it is, and it will be multidimensional and
I felt
complex and
powerful,
subtle and
too.
dynamic.
I felt powerful.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you are, you know, this is powerful and you are this. You know, what this is all power. This is the power that is doing everything. This is, the reality itself is this, is doing this, and is being done by this. You know, the universe, all the galaxies are being done right here by this, in this. You know, it's a lot of juice.
Yes.
And it's you. You are that same system. You are this. So, yeah.
So the integration of this so-called endpoint, there's no endpoint, is being mostly oriented in the unconscious, right? In the
Well,
unknown.
you can say that. It's a more simple way to put it is to let go of orientation. But yeah,
But do you ever let go completely of orientation?
you don't shut it down. By let go of doesn't mean to deny it or to cause it to cease. Let go of means release it as having relevancy one way or the other. So in other words, there may or may not be orientation present, but you don't give a shit. Because you let go of it.
So at any point that you give a shit is the point in which it's stuck.
Yes, exactly so. To put it in the vernacular. I'm not sure of the Sanskrit for that. Maybe some of you Sanskrit scholars can mine the Vedas and come up with a technically correct way of putting it. It's attachment. You know, thinking something has importance.
But when you look, it's like Helen was saying, so when you look at what you're attached to, what you find important, you don't find it.
Exactly. So it reveals itself as being bogus. It reveals itself as being nothing. And once you do that sufficiently over and over and over again, you finally get it. Oh, duh. You know, so the next time something comes up that seems to be important, it's like, I know what I'm going to find when I look, so why even bother, you know?
Well, a lot of times that tends to happen. I don't even go there anymore with certain things because I already know that's what I'm going to find. And yet things still come up, like not very strongly, I have to say.
Sure.
Not, but just here.
Yeah, but that's great. But that's let go of. Letting go of it means you don't even care whether or not it comes up, because who cares? Let go of it is having importance. Even if you're obsessed and you find yourself hanging out in neurotic portions of your personality, who cares? What difference does it make? Because it's all just this. It doesn't need to look one way or another. It's not better if it looks a certain way. It's not better if it's all open and translucent and whatever. You know, it's not worse if it looks like you sitting there obsessing about something or being neurotic about something or whatever. This doesn't matter, because what all of that is intrinsically is this amazing, essentially transcendental whatever.
And neither for or against.
Yeah.
Black or white.
Yeah. Without just let it flow. Let it flow loose. Just let it go. So looseness, ease, playfulness, in terms of sort of the qualities of how to approach it are most optimal. Because that intrinsically diffuses this tendency to think things are important or have some urgency. Oh, this matters. But this is important. This matters. Whatever it is. And just laugh and say, yeah, right. Been there, done that.
So what's been going on with me recently is the real letting go of attachment to non-attachment.
Good.
So yeah, neurotic spinning happens, and until it sees itself and does something else, and yeah, so there's this.
Yeah, that's really good.
So there's a sense of no problem, even though there appear to be problems.
Yeah.
They pop up, they get ignored or tried to solve or whatever.
This is the usual, right?
Yeah,
Life.
yeah, the usual, exactly.
Nothing
But-
new there.
But they aren't problems.
Right, exactly, yeah. That's great. See now that's very good. Because that's the subtlety of letting go, is letting go of letting go. It's not like, I will let go, I have to let go. Keep going and really work hard and letting go. Hey, maybe I'll let go, maybe I won't, screw it.
Yeah.
And then you've let go of letting go, which is the true letting go. And then you let go even if you're not let go. So it's easy.
Yeah,
It's just very, very easy. You can be uptight and neurotic and obsessed and pissy and everything, and who gives a shit? It just doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter if other people care either.
Yeah, of course not.
That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what the authority that energizes that, the authority that justifies and proves that, is the noticing of what this is. So they go on concurrently. The noticing is a continual verification of the fact that no condition that appears departs from this. At first, what you notice is the specialness, and all of a sudden that's good, and then the not noticing is not special, so that's bad, and you're polarized and you're oriented towards noticing. But then you even let go of that, and the noticing verifies that everything is this. So if that's true, if that's really, really true, then even my pathetic neurotic personality and my stupid obsessiveness and my perverse tastes and all of that are this. So how can they be a problem? How can it matter?
Yeah, any clinging is just as special as, grooving on nothing, whatever.
Yeah, exactly, because this is doing the clinging, this is doing the neurosis, just like this is doing the explicit transcendentality and doing the explicit light shows and the explicit no self and divinity and all that. It's all the same.
Yeah.
It's only one game in town, so every aspect of that game is that. And when you get that, you just let go.
Oh, it's interesting because when the clinging comes up, it feels like more skills and tools are coming in to kind of work with it, but they're also getting burned up at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like so it's all just really interesting.
It is. It's the whole process and the subtlety of it and the recursive nature of the engagement and all that is just amazing.
Yeah.
And in
yeah.
yoga, they have this wonderful image of you use a stick to stir the fire, and the fire consumes the stick. And so, likewise, you use all of these absurd expedients to deal with all the absurdities that come up, but it all kind of just melts into this.
Yeah, all of that.
But it's not a reason to not do that.
Exactly.
Because who cares?
Yeah, and the whole doing, not doing thing. I mean, like setting up the room, there was a whole lot of doing going on.
Sure.
Because, doing was wanted, so doing's happening. It's like that's, we're in our head organizing and blah, 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 and so what? That was fun.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Because of what it is. Because it is there.
Yeah, because it's not anywhere separate from anything else, any other activity or non-activity or sleep.
last year when I had my back injury, and I remember you were talking about the first time I heard about the Kundalini energy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the first time I heard it. And you also mentioned that during the process, there are so many things that happened in the world around me and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it was so true. Things does happen, and but from all those experiences, I can see more clearly they are just the energy in play themselves. Like from my upbringing or whatever, there are certain kinds of energy, and some can be very recurring, and make me feel like that's the truth, and that's my point of view, and things should be like this or should be like that, so on and so forth. But during this process, the energy starting to play. I started seeing how the energy is being played by itself, and starting to loosen up.
Yeah.
And there's so many things happen, and the way this energy responding is kind of started opens. Well, I can't even say what is good thing, what is the bad thing, because you can't pin down like you said. It's just that happens and the continuously rolling, and you cannot say what it is.
Yeah.
And also the way this energy system responding is starting jerking down, and when those things deeper is the thing that I wasn't really realized that comes up, and then jerking out and it opens up. And so the latest thing was, I didn't see that. I don't like people pointing out certain things that I was not right. In my lifetime, when people doing that, I got really tied up, energy-wise.
Yeah.
Now I can see when this happened, I just feel filled with love. The energy just keep open. The more that the criticism comes, the more she opens up and filled with love. And I was so, I can see this energy changing. The Kundalini energy is lovely.
Yeah.
Whatever, I don't really know what that means.
No, absolutely. No, that's it. The energy cures everything, amalgamates everything, includes everything melts into it, everything reveals itself as it. So it eats everything in a way until there's nothing but it. And that's it. And it's fun and interesting and entertaining and surprising and amazing. It's just the energy of experience. And see, in terms of what we were talking about earlier, like with the conscious and unconscious, that's an example of, because from the unconscious point of view, it's quite clear that this is all just a sea of energy. From the conscious point of view, oh no, it's not a sea of energy, it's people and tables and there's a room and there's a talk going on and it's about to be lunch and we're getting hungry and I wonder what's happening this evening and blah, 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 blah. Right? But from the unconscious point of view, it's just this luscious sea of amazing energy just morphing and wafting in and out like a light show, like the Northern Lights or something. And when you see that, that provokes a shift into being with it in those terms, being with it in that mode. And that mode is inclusive. It basically includes all other modes because it does. It already actually does include all those modes intrinsically. And you just gradually settle into that, melt into that, and that becomes more and more obvious, and then
So I'm not sure where this fits in, but so to the degree that I am in that space of noticing everything in the energy and all of that, then who gives a damn about anything it does? None of this matters in the way I construct it. And then very recently, without even going through that whole process, the thought keeps coming up, oh, I could die now. Oh, I could die now. Oh, I could die now. And there's no story behind that. I have no idea why it's coming up. It's just an interesting thing that it seems to accompany the rest of this whole burning away of. And I just felt like sharing that. Sure. You don't have to come.
But, you know, but again, as one spontaneously lets go into this openness, you get that, you know, you're not clinging to anything. You can die. You can live. And you can live now too. You can die now. You can, whatever happens, and it's all good. You know, and
It just is.
yeah.
It's just a totally different orientation.
Yeah. Because it's not oriented towards clinging, so it's holding things to be this or that, and then doing all this elaborate gamesmanship with trying to manipulate it and trying to manipulate yourself with regards to it, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I find it humorous that my notes all throughout, no condition departs from this. And then another one I read, no condition departs from this, and underlined. The next one is like capital letters. No, it's like, oh, you mean no condition departs? I mean, I don't get it.
What do you mean by that? Condition departs what?
It's just, I mean, because obviously I feel there's conditions that depart from this, which is why I keep taking the same note.
Sure, yeah.
Or I can see it at deeper levels that.
Sure.
Even as, you know, I'm in the darkness and I see the sparkles, and sometimes I'm looking at it, and sometimes they get three-dimensional and they kind of dissolve the looking. It's just they take the place of where the looking's happening. It's just,
Sure.
and so that's more real than the separate looking at, but the earth actually saying, well, no condition departs from this.
It can look like anything.
Yeah, that's what
It can look like anything, but it never departs from itself.
Right.
It can look like anything, but it never departs from itself.
I can wait till next week to write that down.
And what it looks like doesn't matter. It's not like this one way of it looking is any better than any other way of it looking. But to see that, it can be useful to explore a lot of the different ways it can look. Just to get out of our provincialism of thinking we have to orient it in terms of a relatively narrow repertoire, and then there's all this other stuff that may be outside of that or whatever. But to push the envelope and discover just the ways that this can look can be valuable, but not because those new ways are better, but because it shatters our provincialism, it shatters our limited expectation and our limited approach to this, and we get to go, wow, this can look like anything.
I'm getting the idea or the point that it's actually more about loosening up than it is about the actual different modes.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about modes. It's not about what it looks like. It's about what it is, and it inevitably it has an infinite repertoire. It can literally look like anything. I mean, literally. It's not like there's 959,875.3 ways it can look.
Which is all
infinity to the power of infinity to the power of infinity, the power of infinity, and you can write infinities all you want. That's how many ways it can look. It never repeats itself either, so you're really challenged to try and categorize it.
I'm not bad with this yet. I mean, I still have a little bit of a practice orientation.
Right, yeah.
You know, where I go and okay, I'm gonna sit in the dark here and start looking for these things. I sort of like I know ahead of time what to kind of look for.
Sure.
And so I'm actually conditioning it before instead of one looking like anything.
Sure.
Sometimes,
But that's a valuable exploration, because you look for it like that, and then it surprises you. You notice that, wow, this kind of looks the way I expected, but it also is a little different. It's always a little different, and then It's like rubbing your nose in, and eventually it sort of it penetrates more and more directly. And, wow, yeah, this really is open-ended, and that's the point, is to just get the direct verification, the direct evidence for yourself. That's when it's powerful. I mean, hearing it or having it as an idea is useful, but it's not powerful. The experience is powerful. And to get that, you need it's like an ongoing proving it to yourself. You just keep proving it until you don't need to prove it. And if you still feel like proving it, then by all means prove it. And so continue to prove it and prove it and prove it and prove it. And sooner or later you get to a point where you feel like, I don't need to prove this. I get it, And then you won't prove it anymore, unless you feel like proving it, in which case you will, and that's okay too. But that's what makes it powerful. It has to be up close and personal. You have to prove it. You have to do the math. What someone else says or some philosophy or whatever is basically useless. I mean, basically, you've probably heard me say this many times, that the point of any spiritual practice is to learn that you don't need to do the practice. You have to learn that. You can't just be told it at the beginning and then not do it. It doesn't have the juice then. You have to get it for yourself. So, meditate 8 hours a day for 30 years, and sooner or later you've got, nothing's happening here. This is silly. Why am I doing this? And then you'll have reaped the results of the meditation, which will be the discovery that you didn't have to do it. But you had to do it to get that you didn't have to do it. And it's all like that. You have to do the math yourself. You have to prove it to yourself. And that's why I sort of go into talks or reading books. It's useless unless you start living it, unless you start, exploring it in your own experience. And then that's when it can become powerful. You have to see. The fact that someone else sees it apparently is interesting and maybe provocative, but you have to see, or what good does it do to you? And look until you see. A famous man once said, seek until you find.
There's something else after that sequence, and you will find. There's a line shortly after that. I think it's when you find you will be disturbed. I went through a couple weeks ago, maybe even last week, I don't know, too long ago. A lot of, I am disturbed. That was very interesting.
Oh yeah.
In the seeing through of some things, it was very disturbing.
Yeah, genuine spirituality is provocative. It's disturbing. It rattles your shit. It's like,
yeah.
It shakes you up. If it's real easy and fun and light, you're probably not really digging in, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I went through several phases of being really disturbed, but it was exciting disturbed. It was interesting. But it was disturbed, and it was interesting having heard that quote before, and then I went and found it and read it. And it was like, okay, I didn't really understand that, what he was getting at.
The end of that particular phrase is, "And you will reign over all."
Yes. Yes. Or another translation, over we all. So it's something kind of. Yes. Yeah.
How does the entire quote go?
Don't remember.
Something
Gospel of
like
Thomas.
let the seeker seek until he finds. When he finds, he'll be greatly troubled, and then he'll be astonished, and then he'll rule over the all.
Yeah. Yes, that's
Gospel
pretty-
of Thomas.
Yeah,
That's a pretty good translation.
Yeah, that is.
And that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're talking about. That's the sum total of what we're talking about here. And It's all right on the money. That ain't metaphor.
No, it's actual, yeah, how the experience goes.
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of in the between the disturbed and elated. Not quite landing over the all yet, but.
You're still reading the Gospel of the Doubting Thomas.
No doubt. Looks like that.
I go through these like waves of this deep wanting to be isolated from everything, from everyone, right? My role, my job, all that stuff, just really ripping that off, just be by myself, and that passes. And then I see, oh, it doesn't really matter who's around me, what I'm doing. I can still notice. And it sort of just goes back and forth between those two. And I mean, those feelings of isolation sometimes were so strong that I felt this urge to leave it all. Like, sometimes you hear the, spiritual people say, like, oh, I have to, like, sell everything and go. And I was like, well, you don't have to do that. Why do you have to do that? But I actually have those urges to do that. So to what extent do you follow that, or you either do or you don't?
Yeah. Well, it's less important that you follow it. That's happening is a very good sign because it indicates the intensity of your engagement. So, in other words, whether you follow those urges or not is really almost irrelevant. But that they're happening is very good. So your seriousness and your engagement and your passion about this is excellent. And is the energy. The only thing that matters is noticing, and noticing can happen in any context. You can run away from everything and do noticing. You can, be a party girl and do noticing. It just doesn't matter. So it's as long as you remember that, you're in good stead.
Yeah, kind of sort of like fluctuates like that.
Yeah, and that's fine. You don't need to be consistent. Maintaining consistency is basically trying to have conformity to a fantasy.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to control it. It's not like, sometimes I go into nature. I go on a lot of walks, and it's just I really want to be there. Like, I don't want to go back home. I just want to stay
But that's
there.
fine. And the fact that you have a conundrum there, the fact that you have a sort of a paradox is also very good because it sort of keeps the fire burning. That's good.
Yeah, and then I get cold.
That's okay. That's okay. All this kind of stuff is very good. All this kind of dynamism is very good. Just don't worry about it being this or that. Don't worry about needing to resolve it or needing to choose or anything like that. Just let it have its own way. And maybe you will. Maybe you'll leave it all. Who knows? Shave your head and go to India or something. People do that all the time.
There's my concern about that.
But that's not important. Whether you do or not is not the point. The important point is to keep up with your noticing. And not like dutifully, but intelligently.
Yeah, because like I'm saying, sometimes there's so strong, I don't have control over it. It's not like I'm doing it and dealing and saying, oh, I'm going to do this rather than it literally just leaves going.
But that's not important. The urges are you, so you don't need to have control over them. They are you. Those urges are you, and so they will do what they do, and they will take you where they take you. But that's where you're supposed to be. So you don't need to second guess it. It's your own energy. You're being just jerked around by your energy, which is great. So that itself becomes another mode of engagement with the energy. I mean, noticing is not just noticing sort of tripping on subtlety of experience. Noticing is engaging with the reality of of what you actually are, of your being, of your drives, of your motivations, of your passions, of your conflicts. I mean, all that's all very direct, and you can be with it very directly, not by being heady with it and sort of sitting contemplating it, but by living it. It's its own kind of noticing. Because the energy is intrinsically integrated. The energy is like a vat of molten metal, and everything that gets near it just melts into it. So it integrates. It takes everything, pulls everything into itself. So having the energy of your being in your life, the vitality of your being in your life itself is inherently integrated. Noticing is just a way of kind of accelerating that or making that very efficient. It's all about the energy.
Excuse me, does anyone have any matches by any chance?
I mean, that's the whole key to noticing is the energy. Noticing is noticing the energy, basically. And I often phrase that in terms of noticing the energy of the substance of experiential qualities. But any energy, any place you notice the energy at all is equally vital.
Two, 3 weeks ago, I was like dreaming. It was just a question all night long. It's like, so why do anyone create any of this? The good, the bad, the ugly. And it's, why does Saguna come from Nirguna? It's like, I didn't go to sleep intending to ask that question. It was just that one focus all night long. Why do we create any of it?
Yeah.
And there was no answer.
Welcome, please come in.
I just thought it was interesting
Yeah.
that should occur.
Yeah.
Hi.
And yeah, I mean, I'm often struck with the meaninglessness and purposelessness of everything. It seems to me that, and then you say from your perspective, there is, I think, correct, profound meaning and purpose, from what you see, which I don't see.
Well, it's meaningless and purposeless
From a human.
from the point of view of the conscious mind of what we were talking about before, from an analytical point of view. But that point of view is irrelevant because it bootstraps itself up on its own logic. It has no actual basis in reality. So the fact that things are meaningless from a logical point of view, from a conscious human point of view, is irrelevant because everything is absurd from that point of view. That point of view is the problem. No solutions are to be found. And it's not even a problem, of course. But to the extent there seems to be a problem, that's the culprit.
Peter?
Yes, welcome.
Yesterday, I seemed to be in a nice place. I was with a group of half a dozen people, and they all seemed to be on the same level.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't into their heads or my head, but they were all just doing different things, and I was watching.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, gee, this is oneness. This is lovely. And then I realized that I know my emotions, and I don't know their emotions. And then drag me into separateness.
Mhm. Yeah, because that's an abstraction. The oneness, the actuality of oneness is the field, the continuity of the field of your experience. They were all showing up in your experience, just as they were, and that is truly oneness. But then you dragged in the abstraction of your emotions and their emotions that you didn't know. And since you don't know them, they're not actually in your field of experience except as a concept, right? It's which is basically means a fantasy. I'm not saying they don't have emotions, but if their actual emotions aren't present in your experience, then you're thinking about those emotions as a fantasy. You see what I mean?
It seemed to me that I got separate when I thought of my emotions, not theirs. I didn't have any problem with theirs.
Well, that my or theirs was even a meaningful category, is where separation comes in.
What
It's
I'm
just
saying
this.
is
It's just this.
I
this.
have emotions, and they don't appear to.
Right. But see,
Does that make me separate?
well, the I and the they is what makes the separation, not the emotions. The I and the they is an abstraction. You're present in your experience. They're present in your experience. That's the oneness. And that's the actuality. But then you designate, oh, this is me and that's you. All of a sudden, to take a knife and all of a sudden there's something different about that and different about this. But experientially, that's not true. Experientially, there's just this one field. You appear in this field, I appear in this field, that's absolute unity. And then categorizing what is appearing or isn't appearing in emotions or thoughts or blah, 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 is all just abstraction. And as soon as you go into abstraction, abstractions by their very nature create separation by the fact that you can designate something as being this versus that, or this versus not this, mine versus yours, or emotions versus thoughts, or anything that is differentiable. Experientially, nothing is differentiable. Your experience is just a field of a continuum, right? Right now, right here, there's light present, there's sound present, there's sensation present, and it's all just this nice big bubble of glowing qualities, right? That's an actuality, and it is a unity. That's real. And the abstractions and the labeling things and thinking about things and all that is imaginary. It's fantasy.
I got it. The fact that I have no emotions is no different from some of them who are big and some of them are small.
Right. It's just something appearing in this continuum.
Yeah.
And labeling it, as emotions is already kind of differentiating something out, which you can't really do. I mean, emotions are certainly present, right? So there's feeling here. But what is here is more than just the labeling, and the labeling doesn't actually separate anything out. See what I mean? Calling it emotions doesn't take the emotions and put them over here and have my field of experience over here somewhere. It's not like that, is it? It's just a labeling of an aspect, an arguable aspect of the field, which is a continuum. The field, the continuum of experience is the only actuality. And that fact is the powerful fact, and that fact is where you find unity, where you find transcendence of ego, where you find eternity, where you find all of these fabled, fabulous qualities that spirituality promises. They are all nothing other than this field, this amazing field of your experience. And it's actual. But anything you can think about it or say about it is a fantasy. It's completely undescribable. You can't say anything about it. I mean, you can say anything you want about it, but it won't be accurate. It won't be complete. It speaks for itself. It is its own completeness. It's like, the only accurate map of New York is New York itself. Because no matter how detailed a map of New York you have, if it's a map, if it's not New York, it's going to leave something out. An accurate map of New York would have to have this person that happens to be walking down the sidewalk right now, this broken window pane, this phone ringing, this, and only New York has that level of detail. So likewise, only the actual continuum, the actual field of your experience, includes what's present in the field of your experience. Any abstraction or description of it is going to be partial, and in that partiality it's inaccurate, it's fantastic, it's not true.
And it costs you the peace.
And which?
And it costs you the peace.
Yeah, sure, exactly. I mean, that's, you've heard the myth of the Garden of Eden. God says to Adam that, you can eat of the tree of life, but if you eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you're going to be kicked out. Well, knowledge of good and evil is actually just means differentiation, differentiating this from that. Life is just this continuum. And when you are with your experience as this present continuum, that's eating of the tree of life, and you get to stay in the Garden of Eden, i.e. in heaven, in transcendence. As soon as you start saying, oh, this is different than that, I'm different than you, the chair is different than the floor, all these designations of apparition within this actual continuum of experience, within life, that's when you get kicked out of the garden. That's when you're screwed, that's when you suffer, that's when you're living in partialities and separation. And it's all imaginary. It's not even real. You're not even really out of the garden. You just think you are because you're so tied up in knots by your own cleverness, your own fantasizing.
God says, everything you name, that will be the name of it or something, before the fall or something. So there's a kind of differentiation there's an identification of apparent separateness.
But naming is not qualifying.
Uh-huh.
See, and this is a very important point. There's two ways to use language. One way will not entrap you, and one way will. You can use language referentially, or you can use language definitively. Referentially is like a URL. It's like I can say that's a chair, which means that chair is a designator I'm using for this unknown infinite actuality. And I'm not supposing that this is constrained in any way by any notions of what a chair may or may not be. So I'm using chair simply as like an address of an infinite actuality. Whereas I can use it definitionally and say, no, this is a chair. It's a chair, it's nothing other than a chair. It's not a chair, it's a chair. Nothing more than a chair, it's just a stupid chair sitting there. And that's using it definitively, and that's the way of using the language that gets us in trouble. So naming per se, designating per se, doesn't cause any problems, as long as you can use the symbols referentially and not definitively. It's when you fall into definition that you're in trouble. So saying this is me is not a problem. When I think that I am me, as separate from some not me, that's when I'm up the creek. See what I mean? That's all the difference in using language as to refer to actuality as opposed to define entities. Because entities are actually undefinable. So you've gone into insanity, you've gone into craziness if you think that that's possible. It's arrogant to think you can say what anything is, because in actuality we all know you can't. You don't know what anything is. No one knows what anything is. Well, why don't we take a little break for lunch? maybe half hour or something like that, and then we can come back. How late can we go today, Leif? What's our flight? Okay, great. There we go, we're online. Okay. We're back into the electronic reality. And the real reality too, incidentally.
What are the true facts about your visiting list?
About what?
About your visiting list?
About my what?
What? Visiting list, coming to see us.
The true facts? I don't know, involves Southwest Airlines and traffic and rooms and...
I know, I can see you're here. What about next month?
Oh, next month I'm not going to be here. I'm going to do a talk in Seattle. And in the future beyond that, I have absolutely no idea. I will know probably shortly after the talk in Seattle next month. I may do a series of talks up there for a little while, which would probably mean I wouldn't be coming down here for a bit. But I'm not certain about that, so at this point it's completely up in the air. At this point, all that I know for sure is I won't be here next month. And I will, of course, keep everyone posted beyond that.
Your teachings are the pearl of great price. Please don't keep them from us.
I wouldn't do that. But you've all been doing very well with incorporating them into your life, which is what counts. And I actually don't say anything new from time to time. I'm saying basically the same stuff over and over again. Of course, I realize it's a matter of fine-tuning and so on and so forth.
It's your presence and your affection and your humor and all those incorporated.
Well, likewise, it's lovely to see you and visit, and I hope and I'm quite sure that will continue to be the case sooner or later.
We appreciate you, we really do.
Well, thank you so much.
Is this the first group that you kicked out of the nest?
First of all, there's no group. Second of all, there's no nest. But otherwise...
But he has seen you in person. It makes a whole lot of difference.
Well, good. Well, good.
I remember first time when I saw, it's hard to describe. One time we were in dinner in a restaurant. I was sitting next to you, and the restaurant is a very beautiful one, and there's so many people in the restaurant, very noisy. But at that time, I clearly saw everything's happening. It's just happening. There's nothing under it.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I was sitting next to you.
Maybe yes, maybe no.
All things considered.
But who could deny this to any other community, to be honest with you?
Well, we'll see what happens, but again, the important point is to own this stuff and to make it your own and to make it a part of your life for yourself. Because in actuality, you don't need to get it from outside you. I mean, I understand that working with someone can be helpful, can even be very helpful in this process of making it your own. But really, all that you find meaningful in these kinds of interactions is actually in you. It may be the situation may be a catalyst to help you to notice that or to have the experience of that, but in actuality, you always experience your own qualities. So when you find meaningfulness in this kind of work and so on, you're actually finding your own meaningfulness. And so, it's very important to identify it as such and not project it outside as, I need to get it from outside, I don't have it, I need to get it from over there, because it's not true. It's really not true. No. I mean, I appreciate that it is obviously very useful to work with someone, but it's a very complex situation, and the really important point is to make it your own, to really find in yourself what works, and even if you find something just slight in yourself that is like, wow, yeah, I see what's going on with this, even to a small degree, that's huge. And you just work with that and work with that, and it develops spontaneously. You know, it's like putting a little hole in the bottom of a boat. It can be just a little bitty hole, but sooner or later that boat's going down. You know, it may take a while, but that boat's going down. So that's how it is. You just pick away, you know, find little ways in which this connects, this is meaningful and actual for you in your experience without pretense, without constructing it. Just find some way, wow, yeah, there's something in my experience that's really kind of interesting, kind of amazing over here. If I look over here, remember to do it once in a while, it's fine. And just that is very, very, very powerful. You know, but it accumulates, and this takes, you know, this happens over time. This can be, you know, it's not necessarily an overnight proposition in terms of what it looks like. But, you know, that's how it is. It follows its own course.
It does seem that hole in the boat, as the water comes in, the hole gets bigger.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It does. It builds up. You know, it's exponential kind of a thing.
Yeah. So
You
it
know.
starts sinking faster.
Yeah, and you get more and more empowered. You get more and more of your own authority, and less of a needing to be shored up or you know, reinforced from outside. So.
And what you do isn't so much shoring up or reinforcing. It's more not letting any of us. I mean, it's of all the spiritual teachers I've ever sat with. I think that you are you know, just, you know, right there on not letting anybody stay in some kind of complacency, you know, with an idea of how things are. You know, it's like at whatever level somebody's at, you know, you're just blasting them away from that particular resting point. And
I'm just a mean guy. Don't let anyone have any rest.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the value of this teaching.
Yes,
You know, we all
exactly.
recognize it, and we really truly appreciate it.
That's good. You know, but appreciating it is appreciating its actuality. You know, and its actuality is not in me, it's in this. It's in what this actually happens to be, what this turns out to be. Which is great. It's good, that's really good news. Because you don't need to go anywhere else to get it. You just need to, this experiential field that is present is the gold mine. You've got a treasure right here, and that is wonderful. That's great news. It's like hallelujah. You know, it's right here, and you can just mine it at your leisure.
One time I received an email, and in that email it says that the last words of Buddha's teaching is, be your own lamp.
Yeah. Be a light unto yourself.
Yeah, be a light on yourself. Well, you know, as soon as I saw that, the tear just coming out, you know, without thinking, it just that impact. And beautiful teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's the point. The point of spirituality is to incorporate it as an actuality in your own experience, to find the basis for it in objective fact, not to just have to have it be some propaganda that you have to, you know, be brainwashed in or something like that. So, you know, that's when it becomes personal, that's when it becomes actual, and that's when it becomes effective. It starts to really pop, you know, it starts to really bear fruit. Your basis is actuality, your basis is just objective reality, what this happens to be. And then you don't need, it's much more efficient, you don't need to be shored up from outside or, you know, reinforced from outside or something. I mean, I understand it's a complex, the actual mechanism of this whole very strange process is greatly facilitated by having someone to work with. But it really is, it's not the foundation of it. The foundation of it is what this actually what this actually is, what this actually happens to be. Which I didn't make it that way. It just happens to be that way, and it's all of our great good fortune that happens to be the case. I mean, imagine how tragic it would be if the world, if reality was a horrible, sort of pathetic, soulless, material disaster that, you know, most people may think it is. You know, I mean, what that would be? I mean, a horror. You know, just go kill yourself or something. It's like, you know, that it is such an astounding and amazing phenomenon. Is, I mean, what luck? What luck? And this is all just about taking advantage of that fact.
Yeah, with this impending, well, you know, who knows what, the LA and all that sort of thing, but
Well, there's impending unknown, which
Yeah,
is always
unknown.
impending.
Well, it's, I'm finding that it's this feeling of sort of the rubber meets the road, and I've actually been going back through copious notes and you know, the emails and all that stuff. I mean, it's really been very refined and very, I mean, there's a lot of stuff there.
Oh, yeah.
And,
You've got about 4 volumes of books.
Oh, yeah.
You have my blessing. Just, you know, rewrite it and put it in your name, and you've got a new career set out.
I've tried, not to publish it, but I mean, I tried to organize it, but it's so far to but I just like to go back and look at stuff and go, oh, wow. And even going back to seeing that on your site, we have Dildo Kinsey's the Dzogchen and Daily Life. That thing's amazing. Like every sentence, like, wow. It's not line like that. Every perception is fresh, and everything. I mean, these throwaway lines. Every single one of them. Wow. It's a matter of
It seems very matter of fact.
Yeah.
It just seems like, yeah, okay. But then you really read what he's saying, don't you?
Well, it's the same with all the notes. There's plenty of. But it's really making it, like you say, making your own rather than just waiting for the next business.
Yeah, you got to own it. You know, that's when it starts getting really strong. That's when it starts taking off. Because it's not about something outside you. It's not about something that someone else knows. It's about seeing what this is, what you are, right? You know, actual. And it's grounded in objective actuality. You can't lose it. All you need to do is just look at it and take advantage of it.
And to a lot of my coworkers, coming to work, it seems like the most boring thing in their life. You know, it's just dragging and they hate to come to work. But to me, every day I walk. You know, when I'm in the office, you know, I walk every move and hear the sound, the talk. It's so amazing. It's just,
sure.
Yeah, it's just a walking and it's kind of you can't describe it.
Yeah.
You know,
Because, but you're not at work yet. You're in your experience.
yeah.
They think they're at work. That would be horrible. Can you imagine?
So it's so beautiful and indescribable.
Yeah. And that's really just to, I mean, that's really it, just to notice how amazing this is, how beautiful this is. You know, there's no, you know, there's a lot of sort of subtle ins and outs of all this, but it's really just gets down to, just, wow, this is amazing, you know. And just a little bit, just a little, even a little bit amazing is, that's all. Just, yeah, there's really something going on here. And that's it, right there. That's the whole shooting match, just that. And it's not like fancy or elaborate or even particularly subtle, although it intrinsically is. Just, oh, it's amazing. This is kind of beautiful. So to go back to where we started today, what kind of any particular places where you find yourself tripping up, or you find yourself sort of getting caught, or you find yourself sort of banging your head against the wall with this rough spots, intrinsic rough spots?
Yeah, I just want to inside and outside.
Okay, good.
New non-phenomenal.
Yeah. Okay, good.
When they're really, where's the line?
Right. But the fact that you can ask where the line is, where's the line, means, okay, play with that, check that out. Is there a line? You know, there's, you know, a thought is present in experience. You know, a car across the street is present in experience. A sense of being is present in experience. A feeling of I is present in experience. You know, just vague, very strange, ephemeral qualities are present in experience. Is the presence of any of those different than the presence of any others of those, or is it the same presence? So is there really a basis for this qualifying, oh, this is subjective, this is objective, this is noumena, this is phenomena, all of these, or is it just sort of a continuum, a more or less continuous scale of just different textures of experiential qualities that appear in various ways?
Some of them brighter, some of them...
Yeah, all that, you know. And again, you can just sort of play with the experiential field and look at our assumptions. You know, we assume that vision is different than hearing, or that different than... Now look at vision. Where's the field of vision? So here's the field of vision sitting here, this sort of rough horizontal sort of ovoid field with very fuzzy edges. It sort of fades away to kind of nothing at the edges. It's sitting right here, right? It's an actuality. You can look at it. You can study it very precisely. What's it in? Where is it happening? What's it sitting in? What's it sitting on? What's just beyond the edge of it? You know? And then while you're feeling this field or experiencing this field of vision precisely, you know, experience the field of hearing. Which is an actuality, it's really there. It's here sitting in your experience. Likewise, where is it? Where is it sitting? Where is it in relation to the field of vision, which is right here? Is it behind it, above it, below it? Is that even relevant? But it is in some relationship. It's the same here-ness. The field of hearing is here. The field of vision is here. But what is that here-ness? You know, how does it work? Where is it? Is it really spatial, or is it just some kind of a strange metaspatial that has a sort of pseudo-spatiality that you can't really orient, right? Or whatever, or not, maybe. I don't know, but the point is, you know, these kinds of sort of investigations or playing with it, exploring it, you can do, and just simple things like that can be very undermining in terms of our knee-jerk assumption of things are a certain way. You know, things are inside is inside, outside. You know, just the sort of the way we sort of unconsciously position the panorama of our experience as having a certain structure or something. You can, when you look closer, you'll discover that it's more slippery than that, and even outside. So you see something that is outside, that's objective, and yet it's within your field of vision. So I see that wall, which is clearly objective. It's not, you know, it's outside of me, outside my body, and yet the wall is, the sight of that wall is wholly inside my field of vision. Where's my field of vision? You know. So again, and the point isn't to answer these questions. The point is to use these questions as koans to destabilize our certainty, our usual sort of knee-jerk, unquestioned certainty that things have a certain structure or a certain, you know, relationship to each other. And it sort of loosens things up a bit. And in that looseness is the opening into noticing the inherent ambiguity and the inherent sort of strangeness and non-linearity that this has. This is a very strange thing going on here. It's much, much, much stranger than is implied by any of our sort of, you know, normal consensus reality interpretations of it. And just noticing that that's strange without needing to pin that down, like, well, what kind of strange is it? Don't worry about it. Just noticing that it is strange is really valuable, because it loosens up the grasping to a frame of reference, to grasping to a worldview.
Can one stick as much as possible with the sense perceptions and stay out of investigating and be led by it?
Yeah. And investigating doesn't need to be like intentional investigating or thinking you're investigating, but you what is needed is a the word? Engagement, a very intimate engagement.
With
Anything.
just what is.
Sense fields is sense fields is fine, or anything. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what. An intimate engagement with actuality, however it's presented. It can be a portion of it. You can engage with a sense field. You can engage with sense fields. You can engage with anything.
Without judgment. Without.
Yeah. Well, the engagement will transcend judgment, because if you're really engaged with it, you will quite right away notice that there's more going on than you can. There's more in heaven and earth than you dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio. You'll just get that. Wow, this stuff going on here that I just can't possibly specify. And so at that point, how can you, if you can't say what it is or know what it is, how can you judge it? So you get automatically taken beyond judgment without needing to try to be non-judgmental. See what I mean? In other words, you transcend the realm of judgment rather than try and suppress or withhold judgment.
I love it.
Yeah, it's easier. It's easier. Because trying to be calm or trying to be non-judgmental or trying to be open or something it's banging your head against the wall. It's much easier to go to something that is obviously beyond any of those concerns, and then they're no longer an issue. And virtually anything in the field of experience will supply that, but you can target it and find something specific within your field of experience which really does it in spades, and then that's all you need. And you can fine tune it. Take advantage of, find something that really is an extreme case of getting out of whatever you're in, and all of a sudden you're out of it without needing to fight with it or suppress it or.
That's happened to me, and I can remember it. I do lawn bowling a lot.
Oh, wonderful.
And a lot of times when I'm ready to lawn bowl, what goes through my head is, oh, I'm not good enough. I won't be able to do it. I can't do it. And one time I just looked up at the trees, and they were so beautiful. I just totally forgot.
Yeah, that's
everything.
exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You go find a realm in your experience anywhere, somewhere. It doesn't matter where any of that kind of whatever you're sort of stuck on becomes irrelevant, and in that it no longer is an issue without needing to solve it.
And I did beautiful.
Yeah, sure, of course.
When I started attending your satsangs around 10 months ago, prior to that I had a very passionate experience that the ultimate is love, the universal L, not the emotional L.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't experience you teaching from that place or to that concept. And then, anyway, I'll make this brief. So last month I brought that up. What about love? And you said, you do what you do with everything. Well, yes, and yes, and yes. This morning, and I'm amazed. And it's happening right now again. It is it. I mean, this morning when you looked at me and you answered a question, there was something that hit me so strongly, the big L, that I found it almost unbearable. Just really, actually unbearable.
Mm-hmm.
And even right now. And I just wanted to tell, I'm so thrilled that division has finally broken down, and somehow, yes, it is love.
Sure.
But it's not, but that's not it.
Right.
That's not it. That's not the litmus test. That's not the ultimate.
Right.
And yes, it is.
Yeah, exactly. It is love, but that's not necessarily a particularly useful fact. Although it's nice.
And yet, for a number of months, I kind of forced myself to come because every time I leave, I get a headache from listening to you. And I'm being honest. And then I kept, integrating it into my life, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I continue to do that. And it's just hilarious to me that I even was making that some kind of division there.
Right.
Because you do teach through love, but it's not through, it's a whole different, I have no words for this, except that is how you teach, but it has nothing to do with that particular experience.
Well, true love has nothing to do with individuality. But
Right.
true anything has nothing to do with individuality because there isn't actually any such thing.
Right.
So true love is not what people think it is because people think of love in personal terms by and large, which is fine because that obviously shows up in their lives. But that's why I don't stress love per se as a point, a teaching point, so to speak, because it's not particularly useful and it's easy to sort of spiral back down into a personal interpretation along those kinds of notions. Because we're so, we have such a history typically personally of a relationship with love, we love is very important interpersonally and all that, right? Obviously, the love of our parents, the love of people we love and our concerns about that. And I mean, the whole thing, it's a real loaded kind of a nexus of issues, right? And so as a result, it can be very seductive to be sort of pulled back down into that if you're not really skillful dealing with it. So I just take the lazy man's approach and bypass it altogether. But you're absolutely right. Reality is love, in the sense that reality is an absolute, transparent, naked engagement and inclusion of itself with absolute intimacy and tenderness, which is true love. But it's not about people. It's not about beings. It's about just a field. God, you could say God loves itself.
Right.
Is a good way to put it.
Right.
And that is the true love.
Yes.
And of course, all spirituality reflects that fact, because all spirituality basically reflects God, reflects the reality, reflects the absolute principle. So that's included, that comes with. But again, I don't consider that particularly practical. As you said, I'm more of a troublemaker. I find that more practical. But troublemaking isn't the goal; it's just a convenient tool. What I do mostly, is, practically speaking, is sort of pull the rug out from under people. But the goal isn't pulling the rug out from under, but still, it's a useful thing to do strategically. Whereas love is more the goal, but it's not a particularly useful thing to go do strategically. So it's kind of complex.
Peter?
Yeah.
Could you speak to us about the value that I never saw about getting lost in how good an ice cream cone tastes?
Oh, it's one of the best values there is.
Or getting lost in a movie.
Sure.
It's like we disappear.
Yeah, sure. That's getting lost in experience is the very nature of reality. Reality is getting lost in itself continually. And we experience this on our personal level as our lives and as our experience. And we've all spent all our lives getting lost in things, and we've generally interpreted it as a problem.
Yes.
And the point is that it's not a problem, it's just a native mode of this. This is busy getting lost in itself ongoingly, and that's all that's happening here. And so when you get lost in your experience, that is the peak experience. But to see that it's, the value of that per se, so to speak, in terms of, and strategically in terms of sort of spiritual development, is to notice that that is it's an impersonal process. It's a process that is intrinsic to reality itself. Reality is getting lost in itself. When you get lost in your experience, it's like a sacrament. You're celebrating the fundamental activity of the Absolute. Because the Absolute is continually getting lost in itself. That's what all this is the Absolute being lost in itself. The Absolute drunk on itself.
It's so important what you just said. We think it's escaping. Yes.
Yeah, no, we have it all backwards.
I hear you encouraging us to do inquiry of various types.
Uh-huh.
And what I'm reading currently says that before you really will engage in inquiry, you need to know what your goal is. You need to know the reason why you're doing that.
I disagree with that. And the reason I disagree is because the goal and the reason is beyond knowing. You can't possibly know it. And it is also beyond expectation. Because what you find through inquiry, what you find through being with your experience genuinely, is so amazing and so unexpected and so transcendental and so surprising. There's no way you could expect it or anticipate it or target it. So I disagree with that myself.
So then what motivates one to do inquiry?
It's a basic urge. It's a primal urge. But it either arises in one as a genuine urge or not. And if it doesn't, then you're not in a meeting like this. You're out while you're going to the movies, or hanging out in the bar, or doing whatever everyone else that's not here is doing. But since you are here, then that signifies that there is spontaneously some degree of this genuine curiosity, this genuine urge to look deeper, to sort of inquire. So you don't need to worry about manufacturing that. It's inherent, it's genuine, and you get to take advantage of it by exercising it.
Yeah, I like that. Nostalgia doesn't seem the right word, but for lack of a better one, just like back to a simpler or more carefree time from childhood, and then I think, but then I've accumulated this story, guilt, and worries and cares, and I'm just, lately I'm just challenging myself, to let why can't I just go and experience this again in some way? I mean, these stories, about, these thinking stories or whatever, to invest in those, and my energy, and to have that, constrict my life, it just seems so ridiculous or abusive and stupid, as opposed to just, letting go to the moment of being in nature,
Sure,
so I just put up a post to note, everything is fresh and new. I have no guilt, worries, cares, responsibilities. Obviously, I'll do my responsibilities, but
Sure.
worry and so just go kind of experience life without all this story, and why not?
Absolutely.
As if they mean anything, as if all this junk that I've accumulated over time, over the years, has any purpose or meaning at all.
Yeah.
But there's a certain security in hanging on to it. Well, to let go of that. The other public service announcement, me being in public, is that going out to the Yucca Valley retreat, if anyone's driving, I'd rather not drive my car, so I'd like to carpool and contribute. So if anybody is in that situation, I'd like to hear about it. So.
Yeah, Jesus is supposed to have said, unless you become like a little child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. And this is exactly what he's talking about. Children
become like you have to become like a child.
Children don't know what anything is. They don't know what anything is, and then they get told all of this laundry list of, this is this and that's that and this is the other, and this is how it works and this is who you are, this is what you're supposed to do about it. And they're told all that explicitly, they're told all that implicitly by just the modeling of society and their circumstances and all that. And of course, being gullible, innocent children, by and large, they buy into it. But the child that you were when you were innocent, when you were a week old or whatever, hasn't gone anywhere. It's there under all those layers, and that mode is still completely available. And that's part of what I call noticing does. It's like it's letting go into that strata of your experiencing, where you don't know what things are, and you never have known, and you know you would never have known. And we all develop different degrees of skillfulness of faking and pretending we know what things are, and pretending we're adults, and pretending we're competent and all this stuff. But, you know, we all know we've all been faking it. We all know we don't really know. And it's a matter of accessing that portion of ourselves that knows they don't know, and yet knows they don't need to know, because here it all is, you know, and what a wonder, what an amazing thing. I mean, a 1-week-old baby isn't lying in a script figuring things out. It's just lying there going, wow! Or wow, as the case may be. But it's basically like, it's just this amazing wow. Yeah. It's not a good wow, it's not a bad wow, it's not an any wow, it's just a wow, right? Just a totally across the board wow. And that's the truth. That's our native mode, is wow. And, you know, this is really about seeing that, about knowing that, about seeing that you are that, you have always been that, and just remember, you know.
Once you become a little child, there's no whys in there.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and that's a yogic instruction. That's not some vague poetic metaphor. That's a yogic trick.
Allegedly, Steve Jobs said, wow, wow, as he was leaving us permanently. And I always had this enormous affection for him, and it was great, because that's got to be what he said. I really don't have any questions, because we all know but when I was little, my mother told me God is love. And it was just something my mother said over and over. But when I was about 45, I actually realized that it wasn't love. And it explained everything. Because some people believe that, what are these attributes that tells us that he's omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient? Well, nothing could be that, beg your pardon, Jesus or anybody. It's only this thing that can have no location. And it's always here. And so noticing is just noticing that everything is love.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
And so that seems to give me a lot of peace whenever in the world gives me courage or something. I just remember that, and then I go into this bliss of gratitude. It's wonderful. So, are there any other questions I should be asking? I know everyone is doing these practicing. Well, that just happens, and I don't know, and I probably meditated, I can count on one hand, actually something like that. And that was a time when I was writing beautiful, funny poetry that seems to be but I'll just pass this on. Everyone seems to wonder, is this a time in the history of the world, the alleged world, when a lot of people are waking up? Most people can remember who John Cleese was. He was one of the driving forces in Monty Python. Well, he has a show now, I don't know exactly the name of it, that he calls it his inner travel. And then he just announces the show, and there are people, usually Eastern philosophy,
Yeah, yeah.
And there was another, there was another TV show, and it's called Brain Games, or what they did in the show was Brain Games. And this one that I remember vividly, they asked the audience to watch this dance troupe, maybe 10 or 15 people, making out in bright costumes, and we were, as this brain game, was supposed to count how many times the people dressed in blue went into the spotlight, in and out, and to count that whole thing. So we're all busy trying to do that thing, and then after it was all over, they said, well, how many times did there blue people going out? And everyone was saying, oh, I don't know that one. And he said, well, did you notice the white rabbit? And apparently, well, they showed it later. And then one of the people said they didn't see the white rabbit, and then we were showing this white rabbit. And then they asked me, and they said, did you see the yellow duck? And nobody seems to own up to the fact that they had or haven't seen the yellow duck. It's clearly imaginable. There was a yellow duck dancing, just walking through. So I thought, this is like noticing. There's so much more going on all the time, and it's funny or meaningless or beautiful, but it is very joyful to be using our senses, hearing and seeing. And then I thought, well, should this be my private should I be looking for the duck and the rabbit? But no, I'm just gonna just be and know that it's all right.
A question about seeing other teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be very common. Well, I consider that myself very lucky and find you quickly. And after I learn from you, study with you, and very quickly the teacher that I saw before, I can see there are grasping aspects to it, so I can see easily. And but it doesn't stop me from going to see somebody new.
Sure.
And quite often, I can see there are, some aspect of grasping or something, and I just let it go. But once in a while, I will see teachers. They really right on the mark. So even though that I know it's all about me, it's all about right here, right now, but it doesn't stop me having this curiosity to find out, not necessarily curiosity of what they're teaching, but there's certain aspect within me and feel like if I can be with the teacher who really represents the truth, that will help me see through or expedite in this process.
Yes, yes.
So that's my basically that's how I feel, and I'm being very truthful of what I'm saying. That's how I felt. And there could be a lot of other students who would go to place to see whoever comes. So I want to hear what you say about that.
Well, seeing a lot of teachers can be very good. There's two issues. Number one is remember not to lose yourself. Don't be. You are always the judge of the teaching, because it's for you. It's not for them. So in other words, don't lose yourself. Don't lose your perspective, and be with the teacher. on your terms. Don't ever lose your center. Right? And number two, another aspect of that is any teacher is valuable. Even and especially teachers that you can sense they're wrong or they're incomplete or they're impartial. Because the way that you can sense that there is something about that that's incomplete means that you're seeing what is complete in yourself, or you wouldn't be able to know that about them. So that's very powerful. It's I call that negative teaching. So it's not that. In other words, if they're teaching something wrong, the fact that you know that it's wrong means that you know it means that you're looking at what's right. You're looking at what's true, and that's the point, is to look at what's true. So going to see teachers is great from that point, even if they're all wrong. Even if you went to see every bad teacher there was, it's very, very valuable, because every time you do, you're forced to look at what's true. And that's the point. The point is to look at what's true. Whether the teacher's saying what's true or the teacher's not saying what's true, it's their problem. Who cares? But you seeing it that matters. And you can see it, even when you're sensing there's something wrong, you're actually seeing it very clearly. Right? You're like, wait a minute, that's not right. So how do you know that? How do you know it's not right? Because you're seeing what is. And usually, very directly, it's not necessarily analytical where you're figuring it out, right? You just know. And so that knowing is a very direct engagement with reality, with truth. And so that's excellent. That's very, very good. So seeing any teacher is a plus, not just good teachers. In fact, good teachers may be more challenging because it may be more confusing in terms of sorting it out. So, but that's okay too. That's another interesting aspect. But it's all good. But remember, again, when you're a teacher, always remember it's all about you. It's all about you. You're the center of it. You're there for you. You're not there for them. You're not there for anyone. And so that's your basis for your point of how do you put that?
Your compass?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Your North Star, is you.
Which brings up, I used to go, before I started seeing it, I was going to a bunch of teachers, and I always felt like it was the same, I was jumping in the same pool, so it was no problem. It's like, but now it's like, and I was definitely seeking and desperate and having experiences with other teachers, but it's sort of like this, I don't feel like I'm seeking anymore. I feel like I'm curious. I'm not seeking so much. And I know that the draw of other teachers was always sort of bliss or silence or peace or something just kind of, it's like I think it's a dream. It's really bad, man. And now it's, I don't need that. I had the same thing as like, I'm driving on the freeway, but I wonder if I'm going to die today, or get in Iraq or something like that. And it's not charged at all. It's not like I'm going to miss out on something that I don't find, like the resolution, like I was so desperate for some kind of resolution, and now it's sort of like that, it's not that, if things resolve, it's less of an issue, I guess I would say. And it's sort of backhanded, this whole thing's been very backhanded. It's not going the back way, like you talk about the castle, the weak wall, it sort of undermined a lot of the fuel that was leading to seeking and stuff. Anyway, it's very it's not, unresolved, but in a way that's not unresolved isn't an issue.
Yeah. And one of the things that you touched on, which is actually very useful to be aware of, is looking to be manipulated, going to teachers and things like that, so they can, you get bliss, or you get this, or you get that. And this is all about suggestion. And it's very useful to be aware of the mechanism of suggestion. And because the payoff of suggestion is not particularly useful. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with bliss. There's nothing wrong with being manipulated that way. but it's not what it seems to be. It's not particularly powerful or engaging because it doesn't have much to do with you. It's not really about something that you're incorporating in yourself. It's like going to a tearjerker movie and weeping. You've just been manipulated is all. The suggestion has been effectively worked on you and it works, right? But so what? And a lot of spirituality works on the level of suggestion. So it's good to be aware of that. And then once you are, you become much less of a dupe in terms of falling for it as being valuable as it seemed to be at the time. A lot of spiritual engagement is basically suggestion and enthusiasm and, like a political rally or something.
Well, it's also a very hard situation too.
Yeah, exactly. It's not empowering to you. Right. You're sort of being manipulated. You're passive. You're being receptive. You're being, pushed around, and in a fundamental way, that's disempowering. Even if it's kind of trippy or entertaining, you kind of leave there feeling woozy, rather than feeling strong or centered or whatever. I don't know. And so, in my opinion, genuine spirituality should be empowering. It should make you, more centered, more independent, more powerful. But in general, in spirituality and in all aspects of life, be very aware of the mechanisms of suggestion, because we live in a sea of suggestion. Anytime anyone uses words, there's an implicit hypnosis involved. Because the fact that something is being designated creates some simulacrum of it in your imagination. If someone starts talking about rabbits, all of a sudden, to some degree, you're thinking of rabbits. So that's saying it, put it in your mind. So you were just being manipulated by it. So anytime anyone says anything, there's this suggestive mechanism, which is intrinsically manipulative. Not that that's a bad thing. It's just a fact. But it can be. It's easy to be confused by that if you're not, aware of it, sensitive.
Could you expand on what you were just touched on good teachers being more challenging in a certain way?
Because you're not sure. You're not sure. A bad teacher, you can look at them and you can know they're a bad teacher. So in a way, it's cut and dried. A good teacher, it's more of an unknown quantity. It's more of a koan. It's more challenging. You don't know if they are or not. You don't know where you stand. The whole thing is sort of, wow, this is interesting. What's going on here? Which is very useful and can turn out to be useful.
No ground to stand on.
Yeah, I mean, a really good teacher will turn you back on yourself. And any teacher that ends up asserting something over here, or worse yet over here, is ultimately not a good teacher. So a good teacher empowers you. A good teacher turns you back on yourself.
Talking about that, I've been to a lot of teachers, and I want to thank you because you have, I don't know how to say, broadened my view of things. I've seen more. Oh, I didn't know that existed. Oh, I didn't know that. From you than anybody else.
Well, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
That's
See?
what.
Big time.
That's what we shoot for here.
Major league.
Kind of a silly little analogy, but it strikes me in one of the Sherlock Holmes stories. Watson says to Holmes, "You just see so much more than I do." And Holmes says, "The problem is that you see, but you don't observe." And I think you keep people to observe. Not just to see, oh yeah, I see a curtain, really observe what's here in this moment.
Yeah, ideally. I mean, that's sort of the direction. Because it's all here, you know. What matters and what's valuable and what's powerful and what's useful and what's ultimately liberating is what's here. So just check it out, you know. Basically, it's not some esoteric something or other that you have to go somewhere else to get. No, it's just what's right here is what all the fuss is about, in actuality. So then the trick is, how do you access that? How do you get that? How do you take advantage of that? And the trick is, and the secret of that is the only thing that limits our accessing this more fully is our limited and our erroneous ideas about what it is. We think we already know what it is, so we don't look. And so finding yourself outside of your own certainty, outside of your own frame of reference to any degree is what the effective mechanism is. Because then you can observe. Then you can get what's there. But if you already think you know, which we all do, because it's just, and the problem is it's unconscious, so we aren't aware that we're imposing an imaginary interpretation on things because we're doing it unconsciously. We just assume things are that way, and so we shut down our questioning because since we already know what everything is, we don't have any questions about what it is, so we aren't looking. Right? So we're shutting down our own inquiry. We're shutting down our own potential of seeing more or noticing more than we acknowledge or than we accommodate in our interpretation.
My problem is that I know I don't know what this is, but my mind wants to know what this is.
Right.
So when you were saying earlier this morning about how this can look like anything, seem like anything.
Right.
But I want to know what it is. My mind wants to know what it is. Is it, and then you said something about it being energy. So is it energy? And my mind going everywhere, trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, your mind is doomed to disappointment because it will never know. But you can know, and in fact you do know, because you're not your mind. You're much more than your mind. Your mind is a tool you have. It's a subsystem that is part of your toolkit, but it's not you, and you are much more than that. And the other aspects of you are capable of being with this as it is, and in effect knowing what it is. But your mind will never know what it is. What this is not graspable by mind per se. What we were calling earlier the conscious mind, in sort of pop psychology terms, the analytical mind, the descriptive mind.
But lately I've been waking up in the mornings with the old patterning, conditioning, whatever you want to call it, of feeling really bad about myself. So as hard as that is to get beyond, I realize that this is probably just an energy that I'm labeling as this.
Exactly so. It is.
As, feeling bad about myself.
Yes. Right.
Even knowing that, it's still really difficult, and I still want to know what this is and why this is happening.
Yeah.
Why is this happening?
Sure. Well, you can, like I said, you can know what it is, but you can't know through analysis, you can't know through reasoning, you can't know through thinking. You can't ask the question and get an answer. But you can know what it is by looking. but you look experientially, you don't look conceptually. And likewise with with all of these mechanisms of self-assessment and the reaction to that emotion and so on, it's impossible, or let's say very, very difficult to challenge that directly, to try and undermine that or change it. But it's relatively easy to bypass it, go to a place in your experience, so to speak, where that is just not relevant, and be there. For example, however I feel about myself as a person sitting here, I can look at the light shining on a leaf on a tree across the street, and it has nothing to do with me personally. It's completely outside of that whole nexus, and yet, number one, it is present, or I wouldn't be seeing it. And number two, I am there, or I wouldn't be seeing it. See what I mean? When you see something, I'm using vision now, but it applies to any kind of experiencing. When you see something, you are there. So the me that is here feeling what I ever feel about myself is here, but the me that's over there looking at, experiencing the light on a leaf, doesn't feel bad, doesn't feel any judgment, is totally outside of that whole whirlpool of meaning, let's say, of intensity. And yet it's actual, it's experiential, it's in your experience, and you are there. So you're here all torqued up about all this stuff, but you're also there completely free of it. And you can take advantage of that by, this is one of the easiest tricks of noticing, is to sort of sidestep whatever seems to be obsessing, because taking things on head on doesn't solve them, it feeds them. You give it more energy. Trying to fix something gives it more energy, which actually makes it worse. So it's counterintuitive. Whereas bypassing it altogether, you're actually withdrawing energy from it by not giving it attention, which actually diminishes it. So even though it's counterintuitive that wait a minute, I'm not even addressing this issue, but you're actually withdrawing its energy. You're cutting down. It's like turning down the dimmer on a light switch on the wall. You're taking the energy away from that and being with the energy that's somewhere else that has absolutely nothing to do with that, and it doesn't have those particular things going on. Do you follow this?
Yeah, but I'm thinking that the fact that I want to know what this energy is, I understand that, but I'm thinking that because I'm trying to understand what the energy is, that's also counterintuitive.
Yeah, but the way to understand what the energy is to investigate it, and the way to investigate it is to look at your experience, which is what I'm talking about. So instead of obsessing that you want to know what it is, start looking at what it is. And you may still be wanting to know what it is over here, that's fine, but over here you'll be looking. So you'll actually be doing the work.
Yeah.
You'll be like a scientist. A scientist can sit there in their office wanting to know what something is, but the bottom line is they got to get out there and do some experiments, and that's how they find out what it is.
Right. And I think I do that.
Right.
I think I do that as well.
Cool. Well, in that case, you're actually dealing with the issue of wanting to know what it is in the most practical way. So that's great. That's what is effective. You want to know what something is, well, try and find out. And you try and find out by looking, by investigating. And so if you're doing that, then you can sort of check that off. Great. Project. I'm in the midst of that project. I'm working on it. It's all happening. See what I mean?
Yeah. And then as far as not escaping, sometimes, it's just, it's just the whole thing of this particular conditioning in this persona.
Right.
Is constantly perpetuated.
Yeah.
Right, or being helped at.
Yeah, I understand. But again, all of that conditioning, that whole nexus, is present in your experience, but it's not the only thing present in your experience. And there's actually a lot present in your experience that has nothing to do with it. Like I was talking about with the leaf on the wall, and Stan shifting in his chair or something. It had absolutely nothing to do with your conditioning. So noticing that fact doesn't. You're not trying to leave the conditioning. You're not trying to naysay. You're just noticing. Wait a minute. That's not the only thing that's here. Sure, that's here. Okay, yeah. I'm screwed. We're all damaged individuals. We've all been through the mill. None of us had perfect parents or a perfect upbringing or lived a charmed life. I'm willing to wager. So we all are in that boat to one degree or another. And obviously with some people it's much more extreme than others. But nonetheless, no matter to what degree that is the case, still in all of that conditioning is present in experience, but there's so much more present in experience. In other words, that conditioning and that whole persona and all the reaction to that is present in you, but you are vast and that is small in actuality. And you can notice that fact, and that's empowering. It's meaningful. It's actually true. It's literally true. It's not an assertion or a claim or an aspiration. It's just simply.
I've experienced it,
Yeah,
so
of course.
I don't understand why this coming back.
Yeah. Well, don't worry about the stuff that comes back. Just go to the stuff that is other. In other words, don't worry about solving this or avoiding this or turning this off. Just go over there. And you will, and by doing that, you will be, over time, you will be de-emphasizing the obsession. You'll be de-emphasizing the whole history, and you'll be emphasizing the broadness and the depth of your other experience, which transcends and which is more than that. Without denying it. It's not a matter of denying it. Sure, you're you, and you've been through what you've been through, and it screwed you up, had the effect it had on you. That's fine, and that's history, it's reality. But you're so much more than that, and so you don't need to keep going. You don't need to hang out right there. You can hang out over here. You can hang out over there. You can hang out over there. And this is still there, but so is that. That's here too. That's just as much here as this is. So why spend all your time here? But you don't really need to. And so this is just sort of noticing that and playing with that and exploring it and learning to take advantage of it. Yeah. But you don't need to drop it. You go over there and it's already dropped. It's pre-dropped without even getting to drop it. It'll still be here when you come back to it. It's like a dirty room. Suppose your bedroom's a mess. You leave it. It'll still be a mess when you come back. Don't worry. No one's going to straighten it for you. But you can go over there and there's a nice neat room. You can go to the library and everything's quiet and beautiful and peaceful and put away. And the fact that your room's a mess doesn't matter because you're not there. Right? And our experience is like that. Our experience is that this vast field and all of these different conditions and subjective things are like rooms. Like rooms in a vast mansion with like 1 billion rooms.
I feel like it's my mind. My mind is this room that's a mess.
Yeah, okay, it is. But that is just one room, and you're actually so much more than that. You literally are more than that, and you don't need to hang out in that room. Even if you can't straighten it, even if the mess is just permanent, you can close the door and leave the room. And from time, you'll come back to it, and it'll still be there. And oh yeah, it still sucks. Okay, no surprise. But then you can leave again. And where you go is just as much you as where you come back. It's not like that's a delusion and that's not real and that's not true and this is. It's not true. It's just, this is real, but so's that. And so's that, and so's that. If you can experience it, it's real. It's real experience. And you can experience so much more than just, any particular set of, patterns. That's it.
So the fact that that's real, so is that, it kind of outnumbers this.
Yeah. It's not only is it real, it's just as important as that.
Yeah.
I mean, that has no emotional charge, and this does, but so what? That no emotional charge is just as real as this emotional charge. And if this sucks, go over there. It's right there, and you're there. The fact that it's in your experience means you are there already. You actually have access to it. It's not even something where you have to, learn some new skill or get to some place that you're not. You're already there. So you have access to, you don't need to be stuck in an unpleasant place. You have other options. And again, that doesn't make the unpleasant place go away or fix it, but so what? You can't change your history. You're not going to fix your past. But you don't need to, maybe. Maybe it's not as urgent or as all-encompassing as it seems if you come to notice and appreciate how big you are, how many alternatives you have. Again, we've been quoting Jesus a lot today, but he said something at one point, that my father's house, in my father's mansion, there are many rooms or something. It's a lot like that, Your experience is this vast field of energy presences, and most of them are what we would classify as impersonal. The trees outside the window, most people would classify as impersonal. The sounds of the cars driving by, most people would classify as impersonal. The light of the sun shining down, most people would classify as impersonal. But those are energies present in your experience just as much as your emotions and your feelings about your history, just as much as your sensations of your body, just as much as anything. These don't have more primacy than that.
The other thought that comes to me is that you don't have to clean your room before you go out and play.
Exactly. Clean it later or don't clean it at all. There's a messy room there, so what? You don't have to hang out in it all day. If you go back to it, it's a mess, okay, cool, so you sleep in a messy room, but then you can go out again. Even if you never clean it, even if it just stays a mess, okay, but it doesn't have to be your whole life locked in the room. You don't have to do that to yourself. You have options.
I think I may have mentioned this one other time, is that my aunt, when she died, she had lost two of her sons. And her mantra was that her remaining son, what was this, was that, well, what else is going on? So that was really quite wonderful. I mean, I'm under the condition that stuff that's happening here is more important than the sunlight, which is not, that's just a very kind of erroneous belief.
Exactly. That's exactly the formula I'm talking about. What else is going on? Yeah, okay, my history sucks. I'm this pathetic, neurotic individual, and I'm scarred for life. Okay, cool. What else is going on? Take that off the list. What else is there?
And also the whole idea, part of this thing of the problems of me is that I can concentrate. I'm very good at concentrating when I which is sort of, I can be very obsessive. I like doing music and ceramics and things that require a lot of repetition and obsession and repetition. So I'm really good at concentrating and focusing on something. And it's more the problem with that than actual whatever it is I'm focusing on. It's just like
every advantage has its disadvantage and vice versa. Every asset's a liability.
Fingernail.
No, I don't know. This knife doesn't seem to be doing
It
it.
doesn't.
There we go. I did it. Brute force wins again. That's usual. The hell with subtlety and skill. Just kick it.
I don't have a very long spiritual search life, and I don't have a lot of experience with other group of whatever spiritual search. But the few I went to or experienced because there are teachers there and the students there. And I feel like this is most authentic, more advanced group that follows this kind of teaching, and it's really very enjoyable to be with this kind of group of people and to study or explore together.
Yeah. Well, good.
Yeah, so there are some other groups. I may be invited to go to once or twice, and some of them over the year I went there a few times, and it just doesn't. The level of it's so uncomparable to this.
Yeah.
I really enjoy this
Okay.
very much.
Well, I'm glad that you hooked up with us with this, and glad to have you. I'm glad it's good for you.
Yeah, it wasn't like a conceptual kind of understanding. It's all about intuition, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, conceptual understanding is basically useless. It's only useful as a jumping off point.
Right.
Conceptual understanding is for beginners.
Yeah. And there are plenty of those.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course. No, that's fine. It's fine. When you are a beginner, it's fine to be a beginner.
Right.
It's quite appropriate. It's silly to you can't take a child and force them to be an adult. You won't be doing anyone any favors, and it won't work. But people find their own level. People find what they can work with, and everything is useful in its place.
But sometimes I do feel frustration, especially with some Buddhism groups. They're very nice people, very generous, and some of the monks are realized.
Yeah.
They are truly, because I can see it clearly. And they can't be lifting up those people. If you have the students who are in this level, if they talk about no self or not this, not that, but it's everything or whatever, those people wouldn't get it.
No.
So I see this so contrast
Yes.
between.
Well, the challenge with Buddhist teachers is they're hampered by Buddhism. If you're going to be a Buddhist teacher, then by definition you have to be carrying Buddhism around with you as well.
Right.
And Buddhism is this very weighty, unwieldy monolith of confusing implications, which aren't particularly useful for actually waking up. So you may be realized, but if you're wanting to carry around Buddhism, you're not making anything any easier for yourself or anyone else. I mean, I respect Buddhism. Buddhism had some very good points in it. Buddha was obviously realizing the essence of Buddhism. The basic points of Buddhism are very clear and very accurate and very obvious. But the problem is there's all this accumulation over thousands of years of dogma and commentaries and interpretations of the interpretations in addition to that and blah blah blah. And finally you have you have 100,000 books of sacred texts, and they're all true, and you have to honor them all, and they're all contradictory, and it's all it's absurd. Buddhism is very simple. No dharmas have a self-nature. That simple. And no dharmas, nothing is anything.
Right.
In particular, nothing is definable. Is another way to put that. The way I put it is nothing is definable. The technical Buddhist formula is no dharmas have a self-nature. There are no entities. That's number one, and number two is the first three of the Four Noble Truths are true. The misunderstanding is suffering. The cause of misunderstanding is interpretation and assessment. And the solution to suffering is to stop interpreting. Okay, there's Buddhism. Check it off the list. You can take the 100,000 texts and leave them, in the museum.
Yeah, what's the fourth one that's not true?
The Noble Eightfold Path.
Yeah.
My personal doubt is is that that's exactly what Buddha taught. I think that's been edited and amended and added to.
Yeah.
Because it's overly complicated and heavy-handed and literal and unintelligent. And my sense of the Buddha was not that. I think he was pretty much of a live wire. I think he was an edgy guy.
When you were speaking before, I was chuckling inside thinking, Peter Brown is advocating denial and transcendence and all these other bad things that you shouldn't do when you've got a quote problem. And why I'm chuckling is because since I've been in this niche with you and have been learning to somewhat do what you're advocating, you know, which is just notice. The things that could have taken me 50 years in therapy are actually kind of crumbling.
Yeah. And this stuff works. It's amazing.
It absolutely works.
Mm-hmm.
But it works on a practical, real-world, interpersonal level as well.
Sure. Oh yeah. It's trickle down. It's a real trickle down, not the bullshit political trickle down.
As compared to hypnotizing yourself by looking deeper into your shit. All you see is more shit.
Sure.
And okay.
On that note, this is going to sound really schizophrenic or bipolar, but there's, compared to what I just talked about a minute ago, but there's another part of me that sees and feels and knows love on a very high, I feel it on a very profound level, very profoundly.
Of course.
And
that's another room.
Yeah, that's another room.
Yeah.
And when I look at people, I see a divinity in other people that other people don't see, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I just
Maybe
see
not.
that in other people.
Sure.
I love people. I love, there's this profound love.
People have a divinity. Dust has a divinity. Trees have a divinity. Bricks have a divinity. Literally everything is divine. Everything is this amazing radiant energy. But yeah, people are divine, absolutely.
Yeah, I see it in people, animals, nature.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Even politicians are divine.
Now you've gone too far.
Okay. Okay, you're right. Over the line.
Well, it's just hard to see it yourself, and it's there.
So any secret teachings you've been holding back?
Yes, come on.
Yeah.
You can tell them.
Forget it.
How about shit has its divinity?
That's exactly. Yeah.
Do you think you'll be born over and over again?
I think that what this is, it will never stop being. But I think it's wholly unpredictable exactly what that's going to look like. It may or may not look like being born. It may or may not look like being a human being. It may or may not look like anything in particular, but it will look like something. Because what's actually happening here is beyond space and time. It looks like space and time. It looks like being a person. It looks like having a life, but it's wholly beyond that in actuality.
So there is no death, but we don't know
Yeah.
in what form.
There's no death, but there's no birth either.
That's right.
Birth is a misinterpretation. You were never actually born. You're not actually in a body. All of that is just an apparition, which is, and it's misinterpreted as being that, but it's not actually like that.
Right, yeah.
It's just about time for me to knock off. So I want to thank all of you for coming. I'll keep you posted in terms of what the future holds. At this point, I'm just completely indeterminate. I don't even have a hint of a guess As some of you know, I'll be down here in a couple of weeks doing a retreat over in Joshua Tree. I guess some of you will be there. And I will be back here at some point.
Millie Gillespie. We love you.
Okay, Peter, you have